Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Pete, you feel like every time we review a movie, we get more powerful, we transcend.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit, if I'm honest.
Maybe this review will be our masterpiece.
Yeah, maybe bad reviews will die tonight. Welcome everyone. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched a horror movie, we talk about it. It's really quite that simple. And it is a special occasion of sorts because not only is it October, but it is kind of a big deal when a big new entry in a franchise that's, you know, a long running franchise, something that, you know, we grew up catching up with the old movies of, has a new movie. And, you know, we haven't had a new Friday the 13th since we started this podcast. We haven't had a new Nightmare on Elm Street since we started this podcast, but we did get a new Halloween 3 years ago now. 3 years ago in 2018, and it was successful and got 2 sequels immediately greenlit. And we are here today to talk about Halloween Kills, which is Halloween 2 of this trilogy, but technically Halloween 3 if they're including the original. It's really awkward because they decided to just call the last one Halloween. It's, you know, it's a whole thing. But yes, Halloween Kills, that's what we're here to talk about. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into spoilers, and we'll dive in. Tim, before we give our thoughts, you know, our first impressions and whatnot of the new one, I think it would be just succinctly, and I say this because I know sometimes Tim goes into a monologue. Just succinctly, can you sum up your feelings on Halloween 2018, just to put us in the right frame of mind, get into this one?
So I won't go on too long about it, but what I'll say is when I first saw it, I definitely had some strong opinions on it. I didn't like it. I definitely didn't think it was like the worst movie in the world, but I just didn't really like some of the directions it went in. I thought, you know, it was dumb to basically, you know, erase all the canon and start back, you know, from scratch, basically, you know, just doing a direct sequel to the first one. I didn't really like that. I didn't really like the direction they were going with Laurie's character, but I mean, and like some of the weird like comedy elements and stuff, but I still like the kills, and you know, it was good to see Michael back. So I really didn't like it, but I also like didn't hate it with a passion. I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world. Now I did rewatch it before Halloween Kills, like I think at the beginning of the week sometime, which I want to ask you if you did too, but so this would probably have been the third time I've watched it. Like, yeah, I saw it basically once when it came out, and then I didn't watch it for a long time. And I think like when the Blu-ray was cheap, I bought a cheap copy, watched it again, and then I watched it again before this movie. And after watching it a few times and having some distance with it, I still don't like it, but I also don't feel like as much as like a, you know, fiery anger for it when it first came out. Like, I am just kind of like, all right, it is what it is. I don't love it, but again, it's not the worst thing in the world. Definitely could have, you know, done worse, and whatever. It, you know, it exists. It's fine. And going into this new one, I was actually a little excited. I didn't think it was going to be great, and you know, I still didn't love the direction and everything from the last one. But I thought, yeah, you know, it's been a while since we had one of these movies, and who knows? Maybe now that they got kind of all of the whatever, you know, set up an introduction to the characters, new characters and all this stuff out of the way, maybe we could just go in, just have a nice, like, maybe a little cheesy but fun slasher with this one. So that was kind of how I feel about the first one, and kind of how I felt going into this one.
I also did rewatch 2018. I rewatched it, I don't know, 5 days ago, maybe just a week ago, something like that. But the first time I'd seen it since it came out, since we reviewed it back in 2018, and I found myself probably a little more miserable than I was at the time, because I did not like that movie. I was very disappointed in it, and I found myself, I think, more miserable on the second viewing. It wasn't so much that it got worse per se. I think it's probably quality wise is still just what I remembered. It just felt a bit worse because the first time I saw it, there was this like constant hope that it'll get better by the end. And this time I didn't have that. This time I knew I didn't like the rest of it. So all of the early warning signs and all the things I didn't like about it just annoyed me more at the start, because I knew it wasn't going to perk up. So I hated the direction, the editing style. I didn't think the pacing was right in the direction for any of the kills or the suspense. I thought the pacing in general moved far too quick, too many ideas, all these things. We talked about it at length in the first review. So get into
Which
this
people
one.
can still go and check out.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Go check out the which, by the way, that review of the first, well, not the first, but 2018's Halloween, whatever we call it.
Green, some people call it.
What, Tom Green was behind it?
David Gordon Green.
No, I know. But I was cracking it. It was a joke. So that review, funnily enough, is the longest episode of Screams After Midnight for a movie review ever.
Was Matt on that one? I forget.
No, it was just us.
No, okay.
Just us. So I won't remind you what that was, just in case you get scared. But I'm curious to see if we match it. Okay. Tonight. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. I don't know. We'll find out. Yeah. So. Yes, I was going into this one just kind of like, I don't really like. Last time I was super excited. There were some things in the trailers that were making me hopeful for a good Halloween movie. This time, I almost thought that, maybe because my expectations are so low, maybe because I'm such a bad mood from the first one, maybe I won't, be as mad. Maybe I'll just get into the fun of it if there's some fun kills.
Yeah,
so I was being like optimistic in kind of a jaded way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And there was some reactions came out early, some early press screenings or whatever it was, and people were having a variety of opinions. That
you can never trust those.
You never can, but there was definitely extremes on both ends, which was like, okay, interesting. So of course, it comes out. We watched the movie. I actually watched it on Friday. My curiosity got the better of me, and I watched it as soon as I could, and then rewatched it just now for this recording, just so that it was fresh in my head, and I wasn't.
Because it was easy to watch. It was in theaters, but it was also went straight to Peacock. So and I was very lucky because I had actually got a month of Peacock last month to watch the new episodes of AP Bio. And then, like I do with all these like dumb, unnecessary streaming services, as soon as I watch what I want, I cancel. But luckily, I still had like a few days left on my subscription, so I was like, "Ooh, okay, like I can just make it to watch Halloween right away."
Yeah, Halloween Kills is on the cock. That is correct.
Exactly.
Yes. Michael Myers and Michael Scott is it's just all the Michaels are on the cock. So we watch Halloween Kills, and we're about to finally reveal our general feelings on the film. So I asked this with some trepidation. Tim, generally, no spoilers, just general, what's your feelings? Right. How did you feel about Halloween Kills?
Oh boy.
The noise, the first noise you made was oh boy.
I mean, it's just I mean this is really tough because it's like, where do I start? I mean, it's I guess I can just do a very high level take on it and just say it's bad.
You might say, I mean, just to bring an old phrase back, straight up garbage.
Garbage.
Might be a phrase you use to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be mean or negative, but yeah, this is. I mean, yeah, this is straight up bad on like pretty much every level, and like again, it's so weird because like all the same people from the last movie. I mean, as far as I know, I think like it's the same director, and I think he also wrote it, right? He wrote both of them. He wrote all the movies.
I think he co-wrote it with Leonard, but I think it's the same team of writers. As the last one. Yeah, I don't think anything's changed.
So it's so strange because the first one, again, I didn't love it, and there was a lot of problems I had with it, but I still feel like it was a competently made. I must be getting older. Like some words I just like escape me. But like I thought it was like still like a decently well made movie. Like this, I don't know what the hell is going on. Every story beat in this is just baffling. That's the word I keep coming to. It's just baffling that someone decided that this was a good idea. It's baffling that other people okayed it and said, yes, like this is the movie we're gonna shoot. It's baffling that like actors were okay and like no one felt to like speak up. Like every decision is weird. It's way too fan servicey, and not in like not in like a hey cute little Easter egg way, in like a oh, this is just really dumb and jarring.
The first one had, I mean, when I say the first one, I mean 2018. The first one of this trilogy had that problem too. There was just constant teasing of moments from the original being redone. And this one, they find ways to do that again. They find ways to bring back lines of dialogue that are really cringe, interesting.
And it's so like they make such a big deal about like, hey, remember this character that had like one line in the original 1978 movie? Well, they're back, and it's like, I mean, and I think I had a friend who was like referring to this as basically like this is the like, you know, Abrams Star Wars like trilogy for like Halloween, and like I kind of get it where it's like, yeah, it's just it's not good. They're just retreading so many story beats. The thing that drives me crazy is, you know, all right, so the 2018 Halloween, it was a direct sequel to the first one. All the other sequels are no longer canon because it's like, oh, the timeline is too messy. You know, it got out of control. We need to clean it up. But then this movie, they're like, everything is so confusing and like, well, not like it's easy enough to follow, but it's like there's so much stuff that they keep going back to. Like there's so many flashbacks, and it feels like they're doing so many story beats from the sequels that it's like, why did you go to the trouble to like erase all this canon when like you're just basically redoing all these other sequels like in one movie? It's so dumb. And
yeah, we'll get into specifics obviously when we get to spoilers, but there are elements of Halloween 2, Halloween 4, and Halloween H2O all in this.
Yeah. It's and there's like there's stuff that's like a little Easter egg to Halloween 3. So I mean that's like fine, but like
yeah, that's an actual Easter egg though. That's actually something they don't draw attention to. They don't like go wink wink and dramatic moment and pause and, you know, make sure you see it kind of thing.
The problem with this like this stuff though, and this is not just like a problem with this movie, I think it's just a lot of these, you know, franchise nostalgic movies in general, and why I really have zero interest in seeing the new Ghostbusters movie is because they don't just treat stuff as like, oh, here's a little thing for the fan, like again, like if something's like an Easter egg, that's fine, throw in the background, it's a nice little wink and nod, if you get it you get it. But instead, like what they do with a lot of this stuff is they treat everything with so much reverence.
Yes.
Like everything that happened in the original movie.
This is obviously, you're right, this is nostalgia sequel thing now. I associate this first of all with prequels. Prequels do this where all of a sudden every little detail that people liked about a movie or about a TV show, when they do the prequel, all of a sudden, all of those things have little origin stories. Everything has to be explained. It's almost the flip of that, where it's a nostalgia sequel, so now all of a sudden, everyone is calling him the effing boogeyman. The boogeyman! The boogeyman, everyone! The boogeyman's at large!
Oh, hey, Pete, did I mention it's Halloween, so of course, you know, everyone's entitled to one good scare. You know, that's just...
But what bugs me about that, though, is that they actually made a callback to that line in Halloween H2O, and it worked in that movie. It worked well enough in that movie because it wasn't... Because in this movie, it's treated as this big dramatic moment where... And I don't want to get spoilers, but it's a big pivotal moment, whereas in Halloween H2O, it was just a little joke thing that was like a callback to the original, and it didn't feel like they were shoving callbacks every 2 minutes down your throat. And somehow this movie, every single thing they do, whether it's characters repeating the backstory constantly in dialogue for no reason, whether it's repeating straight up moments from the original or whatever for no reason, whether it's endless cameos of characters, and sometimes in some cases the actual actors who played those characters in the original film. I've got a really jokey thing I want to say about Halloween 2 that I can't tell spoilers, but we'll get there. What I will say, I tweeted this as well as I was watching it, is I watched Halloween 2. This hospital was far too busy for Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. I'm just going to put that out there right now. I know Haddonfield Memorial Hospital on Halloween night is a quiet place. I saw Halloween too, damn it.
Yeah. All right. Two quick things I want to say just while we're still on this topic. Sure. One, a quick little joke that I think you'll appreciate that I don't think many other people appreciate. But lately there's been in my in-laws' house, they have like a bear that's been wandering around the neighborhood. So
where's this going?
Well, you'll see. So the first thing I thought of when I heard that is I said, well, it's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good bear. So
yeah, okay, it's not bad. It's not bad.
But then the other thing too, just while we're kind of still on that topic about like how annoying it is that like everything has to be, have this gravitas to it, and things that were annoying. So this was in the Halloween 2018 one, but I was reminded when I watched it, and we were talking about offline a little earlier, but when they meet Laurie meets was it Dr. Sartain or whatever, and she says, so you're the new Loomis. Like, who talks like that? Like, who in real life would be like, so you're the new like person? Like, like if I don't know, it's just like so weird and such like a dumb line that like you like it only makes sense like if you're watching a movie.
I can't believe I'm saying this because I thought the dialogue in the last one was pretty bad. That was one of my main complaints, was that so much of it was wordy, overly descriptive. It just felt like they were just never shut up. I think the dialogue is even worse in Halloween Kills. It's so unnatural and it's so constant as well as the other problem.
And you know what it is too is like again, if you look back at the like original like John Carpenter movie, like the dialogue, it feels so natural, and it's just like it's just people talking like going like totally and like, oh, I forgot my math book, like like that's the kind of dialogue you get in the first one. The kind of dialogue you get in this one is like, evil dies tonight. Like it's like these big proclamations, like everyone is like in the Shakespearean play, it's like so stupid. The
first time we meet Tommy, he gives a speech on stage at like a bar, and like the camera work is so intense and in his face, and he's like giving this monologue about surviving Michael Myers, and it's like, oh my, I'm actually missing Paul Rudd from Halloween 6 right now. This is how you're making me feel.
There's like the whole survivor thing and that whole thing, there's so much to get into. I guess we gotta probably save it for spoilers, but I have so many thoughts on that stuff.
Yeah, I have thoughts on so much.
Let's get to you, because I basically I've went on like longer than I even thought I would, but suffice it to say, there's a lot to talk about here. I think it's really bad. It's very bad in very strange ways. If I'm gonna give it a little bit of credit, I do think that it's not intended to, but a lot of it does come off as campy, so I was laughing at it. So I guess if you want to give it that credit, that's about it.
I think I was in shock and not really even laughing at anything. And then there's a moment, which we'll talk about properly in spoilers, but I will describe it as Michael Myers does something that I would describe as John Wick-esque. And that was the moment I laughed. In fact, that's the moment, because I was watching it after it went up in Peacock, and I messaged you. You hadn't seen it yet, and I wasn't giving you spoilers or anything, but I sent a message to you that said, this is getting so bad it's funny levels. That was the moment. That was the John Wick moment. Was the moment I made that statement.
So, it's so funny. I had you messaging me, and then around the same time, I had another friend who had started it, and my other friend had actually really, really liked the first one. They were like really into it, so they're really excited about this one, and even they were like, "Oh, this is bad." Like, and they were like messaging me like, "Did the same people make this one? Because it does not seem like it." Like,
well, that's the funny thing though, is that I do think the same people made it. Like this is worse. Don't get me wrong, this is worse than the last one, but it definitely feels like an escalation of the same people. It feels like the same ball going down the hill.
And I couldn't tell, but let me know what you think, but I thought this movie also looked really bad, but I wasn't sure if it's because like I was watching it on my TV. Like, is that the difference between seeing it in the theaters? Like, but I don't know. I just thought it didn't look good. Like, even on a, like even like be like, all right, story stuff out of the way. Did it at least look and sound good? And like, I mean, sound. I think John Carpenter was still doing the score, but I don't know, even that didn't like seem as good as the last one. But I don't know. I didn't think it looked that great.
I agree. The music's not as good as the last one. There's still moments of inspiration in there that I kind of like. Some of the new plays in the theme or whatever. But I agree. It's a bit more experimental this time, and it's at its worst when it's trying to back up dramatic monologues. Which, you know, other than one exception, right? In the original film, the one exception is Loomis gives a great speech about Michael. Yeah. And it's wonderful. It's one of the most quoted things from that movie. But other than that, Halloween is not a movie with monologues. Right? Right. This movie is filled with monologues, and there's dramatic piano music behind them, and it cuts around different scenes as a character's monologuing. It's just, and because I watched it again, because you can sort of pay attention to some details on a second viewing in a way you can't the first time, I was really actively noticing just how short some of the scenes were and how it was quickly making a point and moving on. And I saw someone on Twitter say that this movie moves like a freight train. That was the sentence used. And all I could say is, I agree, it does move like a freight train. And that is like probably the biggest problem I had with the last one, and again with this one, is that it shouldn't move like a freight train. It's a Halloween movie. It should be slow, methodical. And I'm not saying. And the funny thing is that people are, I think, conflate two things that we say when we talk about these movies. I think there's a conflation of it doesn't feel like a Halloween movie. But then we complain that it's doing too many homages to the original film. So what do we want? Do we want it to feel like a new thing and do new things? Or do we want it to be the original? You can't have it both ways. Yes, but I'm saying that the important thing to keep is the part that makes it feel like Halloween, and the thing that you shouldn't keep, the things that aren't actually that important. But when people are doing sequels and nostalgia things, they think are the important things, which is the names and the places and, you know, referring back to individual moments constantly. That's the stuff that doesn't need to be there. The stuff that needs to be there is for it to feel like Halloween.
And the problem with like all this stuff too is it never feels real. Like it always like screams to me that like you're watching a movie, because it's always like, oh, this feels like an unnatural thing that someone would say, and instead it's just like it's hitting your little button like in your brain that goes, remember this, remember this, remember this.
That's like, exactly it. It's the remember this button. That's exactly it, Tim. That's all this movie's doing constantly.
Just real quick, like I don't want to get like a huge take, but are you excited for the new Ghostbusters movie?
I'm not excited, no, but at least like the filmmaker involved and some of the cast I like enough that I'm not miserable, but like, you know, like you know, I'm curious enough. I'll see it. It might be good. Don't get me wrong, like I do think like we have to stop bringing franchises back, and I saw a tweet just last week that really annoyed me, which is, it was like an article from like, I don't know if it was IGN or something like that, but it was like, is Ghostbusters Afterlife the start of a new Ghostbusters cinematic universe? And I'm like, not everything needs to be constantly happening. Like things can end and not come back, and they're better off that way most of the time.
I totally agree. And again, I want to go off on a big tangent, but just I just keep thinking about it because that, like, to me, just from the trailer, I mean, maybe the movie will be great, I don't know, but just the trailer makes it just like reeks of that remember this kind of problem. And also, and just to backtrack a little bit, to your point, what you're saying about like how it doesn't feel like a Halloween movie, or there's like too many homages and stuff. And then you know, if there are, you know, people out there that are saying like, well, obviously it doesn't have to be like the original, like you guys are too hung up on that. Again, I mean, I agree, it doesn't have to like specifically, you know, do the exact same thing or whatever, but a big thing with this whole reboot, whatever you want to call it, reboot, you know, sequel to the first one, whatever, blah blah blah, this new trilogy, is that they were specifically going back to do a sequel to the original because they wanted to, like, you know, go back to it. And you know, like the filmmakers and like the stars and stuff, you know, they talk about like paying homage to it and wanting to do it right and all this crap. So like, you know, this is one where I think you can easily say like, yeah, no, if they're not doing it, like, you know, if it doesn't feel like the first one, then yeah, there's obviously a problem there, especially if that's what they were specifically setting out to do.
It feels like a fan film made by people who, and that sounds like super. Of it. No, that's Rob Zombie.
That's true. That's true.
Which, for the record, Rob Zombie's films are still worse than this. Right? Let's just get that out of the way. Right? I mean, do you agree with that? Is that something? Are you not sure? Are you actually having to think about it?
I think I still don't. I think it's definitely the first Rob Zombie movie is probably still the worst in my opinion. I don't think the second Rob Zombie is good either, but it is at least there's some interesting elements to it. But I don't know, it's probably still worse than this. I don't know. I feel like I'd have to sit on it and potentially rewatch the Rob Zombie ones again, but I don't want to. So.
Oh yeah, jeez.
But I would probably like going with my heart. I would say yes, the Rob Zombie ones are still the worst.
Yes, right. So I want to make that clear before I say anything else. But it genuinely feels like a fan movie. It feels like a movie made by people who, and like I say, this is going to sound super, super mean, right? And I say this as someone who actually really likes. They do a show together. This team do a show called The Righteous Gemstones, which I really like.
Great show.
Right?
They've done like season. A couple of stuff too. Like they
they've done some previous stuff, but I've not seen. Was it Eastbound and Down? I think maybe it's the same.
Eastbound
group.
and Down. There was one after that too. There was like their Principles. Was it? It might have just been called Principles. Or something like that.
It sounds familiar. Yeah,
but no, I think all those shows are really great. The difference though is those shows are comedies.
Yeah, they're the horror movies. That's very key. Yeah. And the pacing in those is better. Like I'm thinking of the pacing of the scenes in Righteous Gems. And maybe it's just because they're not trying to shove everything into an 100-minute movie, but I don't think it's certainly from a writing and directing standpoint, especially directing. I don't think that David Gordon Green has the chops to make a Halloween movie, and I felt it in the last one. I feel it even more so in this one, and it lingers there every single time. As the same with Michael or the Shape, whatever you want to call him. It feels off, and I've got huge complaints about certain things they do with Michael in this movie. I've got huge complaints about. I mean, I hated about every character in the film. I mean, that's a problem right in of itself.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. And so many of the side characters who are there to be killed off feel like rejects from their comedy projects. And while I like some of their comedy work, they're just kind of annoying in this. So what's the problem?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. And I mean, again, if people don't know exactly where we stand, you're like a huge, huge, huge Halloween fan. I mean, am I correct in saying the original is your favorite horror movie, maybe favorite movie of all time?
Favorite horror movie, definitely of all time.
Okay.
Like maybe top 5 of all time in general. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I actually came to the Halloween franchise like a little later in life, so it's not like as big. It's not like my favorite franchise, but I do think the first one is a genuine masterpiece. 10 out of 10. It's a one of the most important seminal horror movies ever made. It's fantastic. And then some of the sequels I like, some I don't. So like I don't have maybe as strong opinions as you, but I do agree 100%. I think there's like at least like a certain way that you have to do Michael, and you have to get him right if you're going to make a successful Halloween movie. And this movie doesn't do that. I think with the first one again, and again by the first one I mean the 2018 one, I agree. I don't think they made a good Halloween movie. I think that one's at least like on its own, like if it was not a Halloween movie, I think it would be like a decent enough like slasher movie. But as a Halloween movie, I just don't think it works. But again, this movie, it's like everything that didn't work in the first one is amplified by like 100. Like it is like strangely so much worse.
Yep. Honestly, I think it's probably time to just start going through it, because I have so many thoughts.
One last quick like thing before we go into spoilers, and I think this is actually a big part of the movie, is it feels like this movie is trying really, really hard to have a message. It can't just be a slasher movie. There has to be something behind it. If you remember with like the first 2018 movie, they said like, oh, this is like about the Me Too movement. And then I think in this one they were saying like, oh yeah, there's like shades of like stuff about like the protests and stuff that were going on in the country. And I think they whiffed this so bad. Like it feels so hard, like it's trying to have a message, but the message seems so muddled that by the end of it, I was like, I couldn't tell what the movie is saying is for or against. And if it is like, if they were trying to say like there's this message in here, then it's like, okay, you're giving the wrong like side of it than like people would want or that you should have.
There's sometimes a problem when you put in like a political theme into a story, and you don't actually necessarily have like an opinion that you want to give about what's the right outcome. You just want to put it in there, so you end up with this weird muddy thing at the end where, okay, but what was it saying about it though? And we'll get into the spoilers why it is kind of muddled by the end.
And what I think is
a point I want to make though on what you just said though about this, because the last one I did feel it trying to have a bit of that quality, right? A bit of a feminism quality to it. They wanted to have these three generations of strong women. They wanted to have this idea that no one's listening to Laurie, and that's kind of like someone not listening to a victim. And like I could see what they were trying to do. I don't think it was very successful, but there was definitely like layers there that you could see how they were trying to make it work. And then no one believing her is kind of like, oh, it comes back to bite them all in the ass because it was true. She's right to feel terrified, whatever it may be. Sure. The problem that I have with this though, on this point, is that one of the things that I've seen some horror fans who have enjoyed this movie say is that they like the gore, because it is a very gory movie. Yes. Now, I do think that I don't really associate Michael Myers with gore, but whatever. I could get on board with a schlocky Halloween sequel that's Michael going around killing people. The problem I have though is that if you are pretending to have a serious movie and you're trying to have some sort of like higher statement that you want to make, you're trying to have themes, you're trying to have some sort of political commentary in your work, and many horror films do this, many good horror films do this.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. When you cut to absurd cartoony gore or silly deaths that make me laugh, all you're doing is belittling any chance you had of me taking anything you're saying seriously. And there's a perfect example in this movie of a death that's supposed to be this big climactic moment, but then they show like this over-the-top gore of the result of the death, and it completely it wasn't working before then anyway because it was just so hammy and melodramatic, but then they just completely nerf it by like, hey, here's enjoy the gore of this character's demise that's over the top and like silly and ridiculous.
It's so strange. I mean, like you said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a political message. A lot of times we review movies and we talk about how like how great it is that this movie's actually saying something, like, that's awesome. But I think it's probably like a little harder to inject something into the whatever 10th 11th movie of a franchise. I think that's like a little harder, but I mean, whatever, if you want to do it, that's fine. But I guess like they did do it a little better in the previous movie. With this movie though, it feels like there was no thought beforehand, and then like after it was done, they were just kind of like, hey, you know what, we can kind of say that like this is similar to some of the political stuff that's going on right now. Like it feels like they were just like afterwards saying like, oh yeah, this kind of fits into this thing, because it feels like there was like no thought that went into it, or if it was just like the barest of allegories or something. It's just, oh boy, it just doesn't work. And like you said, it ends up just being really weird and muddy and downright comical at some points.
And I think it's also worth saying that a lot of good horror movies that don't necessarily on face value, you look at Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, they're very clearly thick with political commentary and satire. I wouldn't say the original Halloween is, but I do think that if you analyze horror films from an era or a time, and you look at the type of horror movies that were being made, you can actually kind of link the themes of Halloween to the social feelings of the time. You can kind of link it into like, in the same way that in the 2000s there was a lot of home invasion movies because there was this fear of outsiders. You have this unrest in horror movies in the 60s and 70s, this idea that perfect Americana is a lie and that there's evil brewing within. That's kind of what Halloween fits into in a lot of ways. It's not like it's not like something the film's revolving around per se, but it's absolutely there, and it feels very natural, and it feels very it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like this ham-fisted idea that is not been thought out to the point where, maybe the idea, because I think I remember saying a lot about the last movie that there's a lot of ideas in it I like, I just don't think they're handled very well. I think this one, it's harder to say that, but like I still like fundamentally think that almost any of the ideas on their own, if they wanted to really commit to it and devote a film to trying to turn like the hysteria that Michael's causing is a big theme of the thing, and they want to talk about how that drives people to how that makes society worse. Sure.
Interesting.
Focus on that idea. I think it's maybe a tougher sell. It's maybe not what I think of when I think of Halloween, but yeah, maybe you can do something. Maybe that's how you reinvent this for a new generation. Maybe that's how you make a statement and have a new film. But it feels like a tacked on thing to make it feel like it's smarter, when really all it is remember this, remember this line, remember this moment. It's still more that than it is the actual serious film that it's pretending to be at points, to the point of laughter in one or two scenes in particular. So
no, I was definitely laughing quite a bit throughout this movie.
Yes, I did not expect the penguin to be in this film, but more on that more on that later. So, I'm joking, by the way. That's not a spoiler for anyone. There's no penguins. But you'll get what I mean though if you watch it.
There was a line actually I wanted to say, but it was I don't want to swear on the the stream.
Yes. So I think we'll give the spoiler warning now. We'll start working to the film. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to dig into. So
let me just grab old Huckleberry and we'll get going.
Full spoilers for Halloween Kills from this point on. You have been warned. So the film chooses to start with everyone's favorite character from the last movie. Because remember, everyone wondered, why did he just disappear in that last movie? Like, nothing came of him. The boyfriend.
Oh, yes.
The shitty boyfriend character. That's who we start on in this movie. And did they reveal in the last movie that his dad was the bully from the original? Did they mention that?
I did not remember that, but they might have.
Like, maybe it was the sort of thing where if you remembered Lonnie's last name, you might have picked up that his last name was that, and
because I do remember the dad in the last one saying something like I got peyote from his dad or something, and then I think in this one they say like, oh yeah, I did peyote with his dad and stuff. But like, and I mean that's the thing too, where it feels like so like they want you to be like, I remember this character, but like, I mean, I've seen the first one quite a bit, but I'm sorry, I'm not gonna remember like one like bully's name from the very first movie, you know, like it's like, I'm sorry, but this is not like Han Solo or something.
Well, what's funny is that I think that they kind of know this about this character in particular, because they actually they give you a refresher, because we get a lot more of him in a new flashback scene. So more on that. But he finds Officer Hawkins, who is not dead. He wakes up. He was the one who was stabbed by the doctor in the last movie. So
Sartain.
Yeah. So he wakes up, he's bleeding, and he's like, Michael, I have to kill him. I have to kill Michael. And that's what takes us to our extended flashback sequence on Halloween night 1978. What was your thought? So, I mean, I'll give them credit. When it cut to the 70s and you just heard like, more of a traditional Halloween sting, like it was just like the classic music almost playing, like it did elicit a feeling. It was like, oh, okay, this does feel like the 70s again. Like they're doing like it was something simple as like the title card that said Halloween night 1978. It had a bit of like a soft glow to it, as if it was like from an old movie. Like it has that kind of softness. I was like, okay, they put a little bit of effort into that. So what I was not prepared for though. So this is young Hawkins, right? Because I remember thinking when I saw the last one, like, was he maybe a character in the original? Did we meet him? Like, because he's not the sheriff. The sheriff would be far too old. As we see in this movie, we see him. He's ancient. And it's actually the actor who I like from another movie. He's in Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, and he's playing the young Hawkins in this. And he sees Michael at a distance, and give them credit, they recreated the original mask as best they could for this flashback sequence, and I almost got a little bit hopeful, because it did kind of feel like the editing calmed down for a bit to sort of mimic the style of the first movie. Now it went out the window as soon as Michael actually attacked someone in a little bit, but it at least started off feeling a little bit more down to earth. What I was not expecting, though, was the other actor that's about to show up. Jim Cummings from The Wolf of Snow Hollow and Thunder Road shows up playing the exact same character he is in those movies. Which, it sounds like I'm making fun of it, and I guess I am a little bit, because it was a little distracting, because he has the same like voice and demeanour, and I felt like at any point he was going to say something funny. Like I was almost waiting for a punchline at any given point.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because he definitely does like fit the character, like something about this guy I guess just screams like he should play a cop. But yeah, it is so distracting because it's like, oh yeah, like I know this dude from like two like semi recent-ish movies where he played like a very similar character.
Yeah, I mean, one was just last year, like,
Yeah.
so very, very recent. Yeah, like, I mean, I like seeing him though because I like him a lot. Like, I did kind of like, I got a little excited when I saw him, but at the same time, when he starts talking about knowing Michael as a kid and how his mum used to make him play with him and stuff.
Oh God, I hate it. I hate it. Like what? Like again, this is just like I don't know. It seems like they again are like it seems like they hate the sequels so much. Like, oh, we're getting rid of all this stuff and we're gonna do it right and we're gonna not make the same mistakes. But it's like, and then they want to do like so much fan servicey stuff. But it's like, I mean, what is like the number one like fan complaint, especially from like the Rob Zombie movies? Like, we don't want to know about Michael's backstory, and then they're just giving him all these like little tidbits and stuff, and it's like I hate this. I don't want to know any of this. Like, he's the boogeyman. That's it. That's all you need to know. I don't need to know about like these kids that were friends with him. I don't need to know about how he stared out the window. Just stared out his sister's window looking at Haddonfield. Like, Jesus, I hated it.
More on the boogeyman later because I don't want to go on a rant about that word.
Okay.
But so yeah, so they're walking around looking for Michael. Some other cops looking around, and then we cut to Lonnie, and I guess they're trying to show that Lonnie's a victim too because he's been bullied just like he was bullying Tommy in the original. So these older kids are being mean to him because he stole one of their chocolate bars or something.
Yeah.
And I was like a gobstopper because she licks it when she grabs it back.
Yeah.
She licks it and throws it away just so he can't have it. It's just mean. And I thought this was it just me, or like, did you think the way that the tall ginger kid who, I can't remember what the name was, but he says something like, and that's what you get for messing with the Melvins or something like that. Like, he says like a family name.
Mulaney's?
Mulaney's, yeah. I want to say it's Mulaney's, yeah. And I was like, okay, I guess they're going to be important when in the future. When we go back to present day, we'll meet the Mulaney's at some point. And I don't think we ever did.
No, I don't think so.
There was no Mulaney's. Maybe they're going to be essential when Halloween ends. Maybe.
Yeah. The Mulaney's and the Myers have had a blood feud for so long.
The plain white face versus the also plain white face that has ginger hair.
Yeah. Like, or maybe like Mulaney is like pissed because he is like, Tommy Doyle was mine to kill. Like, Myers, you just made an enemy.
Yeah, so he's walking home after the police tell him to go home because there's a killer on the loose, and he trips and like sees Michael coming towards him, and then he just kind of like ducks his head, but when he comes back up, the cops are there, and it's their two, it's there's young Hawkins and Jim Cummings, and they're like, "What's wrong, kids?" It's like, "Oh, he was here." Is it? And right, so I've not liked a lot of this so far, right, at this point in the movie.
You have not liked the first like 5 minutes.
No. But can I just say the delivery this kid has when he's asked who it was that he saw, and we get this intense close up, and the way, like, it's like there's a moment in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull where people make fun of, like, it's the way Harrison Ford says the line part-time when he's asked, I think Shia LaBeouf says, "I thought you were a teacher," and he says part-time. If you watch the trailer for the movie, it sounds okay, it just sounds normal. It's like, "Oh, I thought you were a teacher." He's like, part-time, right? Yeah. But in the movie, they used a different take, and it comes out sounding really weird. It's like, "I thought you were a teacher, part-time." Like, it's like a really weird delivery. That's what this moment reminded me of, because the kid goes, "The boogeyman," and he runs away. The way he delivers the word boogeyman, like, and I actually wouldn't be annoyed at the use of it here, because it would make sense that he might say it, given that he was saying it earlier on to Tommy in the context of the original movie. Sure. And if they hadn't said it 100 times in the last movie, it might have felt kind of special that we had another kid say it that way. But
also, like, I do just want to say, one thing that frustrated me about this movie is, again, going back to the original, the 1978 original, Myers gets away with a lot of stuff, but you still feel like, okay, he could be human. This, he feels like straight up supernatural. Like that scene you were just talking about, like where, the cop sees him and then like looks away for a second and then he's gone. It's not like, in the original when you would see him behind a bush and then it's like reasonable enough that when you look again he might be hiding behind something. It's like, okay, he must have been the Flash to like disappear. And then like, I mean, and then there's more, so like by the end it's just straight up like, oh, okay, yeah, there's no way he's not just a regular human. Like when we get to it by the end. But I mean, yeah, already at this point I was kind of like not digging it.
Yeah, so the cops go into the Myers house. I kind of hated, even though I love Jim Cummins, I kind of hated it went to like a monologue where he's like, that's it, that's the Myers house where he killed his sister in 1963. Why are you telling me this? That we know this. This is like, stop regurgitating the original movie, please.
Is this where he said the line that you're telling me about?
Oh no! That's Little John and Big John who have that line.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
I get confused because like everyone tells a Myers story in this movie.
I know everyone's telling. You think 40 years would be enough time, and not everyone would be constantly referring back to Michael Myers and what happened on that one night. So
yeah, I mean, I got more to say about that, but I think I'll save it for a little bit. Also, I just want to say like that this is like a horrible idea and really like takes away the mystique of like from the ending of the first movie where it's like, oh, he just disappears, and it's like, and yes, obviously like we see some of what happens like in Halloween 2 because it takes place like right after, but this like I don't know, seeing him get arrested and stuff is like so stupid. Like it's so like demystifying.
Obviously he did, because like given the premise of the last movie, but yeah, it's like actually seeing it's like some stuff's just better left to the imagination.
There's something about like a slasher villain where it's just like seeing him being able to be like arrested by cops, or like when you see like Jason being taken down by the army, it's just something about it that just doesn't feel right,
Yeah, a lot of the shape's mystique is that he's smart enough not to like, confront lots of people. He waits for his moment to strike. He waits in the shadows. That's a lot of what Halloween is. But I've got a whole rant to go on, given what this movie does with some big scenes. So
yeah,
let me save that.
So many things to rant
about. Let me save that. So Jim Cummings stands in the sister's room and looks out the window, notices the footprints. And he's like in the middle of a line when Michael just sort of jumps out at him and this is where it starts doing the quick cuts. Like the only one who should be cutting in this scene is Michael, right? Michael's the only one who should be cutting. The editor needs to calm the F down. Like it frustrates me so much. So we have this weird thing where Hawkins comes in and he can't get a clean shot, so he tries to shoot Michael, but he shoots his partner instead. So he feels guilty, even though Michael was killing him anyway. It's not like he was going to survive if he didn't shoot him.
Yeah.
Like, just to put it in perspective. But Michael's able to walk out. He just misses. But the police are waiting for him outside. I guess we'll come back to that because that's more of a later flashback when we come back to that. But,
and I forget because thank you for taking with the bullet watching this again because I didn't want to. But even though I just watched it only like 2 days ago, there's so much going on in this movie that I forget like where some stuff takes place. Like, is this where we get Loomis, or was that another flashback?
This later.
Okay.
They mention him in the opening flashback. They mentioned Loomis shot him 6 times in the chest. But that's about.
That's just another thing. Like, my God, there's so many flashbacks in this movie, and not just to this movie. You also get flashbacks to the last movie.
And did you? Amazingly, you get a flashback to Halloween 2, which is out of continuity.
Yep.
Don't you think I didn't notice this? Especially since I watched Halloween 1, 2, 4 in 2018 in the last week or so, and I was like cackling when and don't get me wrong. Yes, the scene of the sheriff or. Yeah, I think he's sheriff.
The sheriff? It was Annie's dad, right?
It's nice. I'm just trying to remember if it's a sheriff or a captain or whatever the rank would have been in the town. But so obviously, him finding his daughter's dead body was something that would have happened anyway, even without the events of Halloween 2.
Yeah.
But it still makes me kind of laugh that to show this moment, they had to use a flashback of Halloween 2,
Yeah.
a movie that is no longer in continuity. It's just kind of funny.
It's so, yeah. I mean, yeah, it is definitely something to laugh about, but it is just so wild that it's like, all right, you can't erase these movies and then show us like footage from them. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, but you're right though. There's moments later on where Laurie will mention, "I saw his face," and it cuts back to the moment in Halloween 1 where it happens. There's moments where someone else will say they survived something, and it'll cut back to moments from the original or the last movie. I think when Hawkins tells the story about what the doctor from the first movie, we see that scene again, like as he's describing it. It's just over and over again, and it's funny for as stupid and convoluted as the continuity got in Halloween as it went on. I feel like it never did this. It basically never did a flashback. I mean, the Halloween 2 does start with the final scene of Halloween plays again at the start of the movie, but I wouldn't count that as the same thing.
Right, yeah.
To me, that's just them sort of trying to really establish the idea it's just going to continue. So they just sort of show the ending and continue from there. But they were doing this constantly. Obviously, those are just cuts to the movies, whereas this is they made a flashback. They made it look like the 70s. They do what they do, all that.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I probably just sound like really mean, but like I think it's just like bad filmmaking. Like, you shouldn't need this many flashbacks. You shouldn't be flashbacking to a much better movie. Like,
it's a bad move.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
There's so few movies where I feel like I'm like actively disagreeing with every filmmaking decision that is being made, like in every scene. Yeah. But I mean, it's not literally everyone. I'm sure there's at least one moment I like towards the end, which I'll get to. But but for the most part, I'm just sitting going, why are you making this choice? Why are you doing it this way? And why is this the story direction you're taking? So when it cuts back to present day, it cuts to, I think, again, if I get things slightly out of order, it's not a big deal, because once it starts cutting around a lot of different characters, it's hard to tell. We'll probably just stick with certain characters when they split up.
Does it start with the driving away from the fire? Is that what it cuts to?
No, it actually goes to the bar first.
The bar first. Oh, okay.
We get introduced to a couple, a married couple. The joke is that she's a doctor and he's a nurse, but they're dressed up as their opposites. Obviously, she's like a sexy nurse, but he just looks like a normal, guy in scrubs. But so for first,
hilarious.
This is just one of these weird things that felt like they set up that didn't really have a payoff, which is that she's kind of like being mad at him because he's not standing up for himself, and it's kind of emasculating. And then I thought, well, okay, they're probably going to die, but maybe he'll get a moment to be brave before they die. She'll get to see him be brave, and it'll be like a little payoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the whole like they're dressed up as the other one. Like, I think that's supposed to be like really funny when it's just like whatever. And then also, I think it just really...
Also, actually, it's the same thing they did in the last movie, because Bonnie and Clyde, they switched the costumes.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same...
So funny.
It's the same joke. It's the same thing.
Ha ha ha. I mean, would you believe it? The woman's the doctor, the guy's the nurse. Too funny. But also, I think it's just like a really annoying way to like introduce y'all to the new characters. Like, they just like immediately ingratiate themselves to like this survivor group, and like I feel like they're just always in awe of like, oh wow, like you're Tommy Doyle, like I heard you survived the Michael Myers like incident. They don't say that directly, but it's basically like that. Like,
but what gets me though is the way they introduced them. It's because they want to like sort of hide them a little bit and sort of tease the fact that we've got like returning characters. So they do this thing where they sit down at the table, they're kind of up a level. When you're at a bar and there's like a slightly level that's up maybe like a foot or two. So they're like behind and higher up than this couple that we're introduced to, and the point of this scene before it gets going is that the husband like sort of braves up and says, hey, can you guys keep it down, because we're trying to enjoy the talent show that's happening, and they apologize. But it's this weird like awkward beat to introduce these returning characters. Now I also have to say, so the doctor from the first movie, who also came back for 2 and H2O, but obviously they're out of continuity now, she's back. Marion, whatever her name is, she's back. And while I get why some of the other survivors might have met each other at support groups, or they just knew each other anyway, I do think the age difference and the circumstances of which she encountered Michael Myers is so different to the other characters, and the fact that they were kids at the time makes it a little bit weird that they're all pally and like
without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all friends. We all survived Michael Myers. Like, how did you meet each other?
Yeah. Yeah, like was she like hanging out with them like when they were like 10 years old and stuff? Like,
was there like a court case you had to go and testify at? Was Michael actually on trial for murder and you all had to show up and that's where you met? Yeah, maybe there was. I don't know. I don't want to know. For the love of, I don't want to know. Don't demystify him anymore by showing me the court case, please, movie.
Right. Oh yeah, God. It's really, really weird. I don't get it. I don't get it. And then also, and so I mean, I guess, going ahead a little bit, but
well, not too far. I've got a couple of things to say.
Not too. Well, no, I just want to talk about. So wait, this bar is doing a talent show, but Tommy Doyle goes up and basically just like gives us like is he part of the talent show, or did he just want to like interrupt everyone's good time and like give this like monologue about Michael Myers? Like, very
intense monologue with a lot of intense close-ups, might I add, where he talks about two little kids were stalked but one babysitter protected them and I was that little boy. It's a really dramatic thing.
It's like, all right, who's gonna win the prize? Should we give it to this guy that just talked about how he was almost killed as a kid, or should we give it to the ventriloquist?
He's not even wearing a costume. He walks up. He's wearing a jumper. Sorry, a sweater for the Americans.
All right, so I think maybe now we should get into it, but.
Hold on. As the one final little tale I want to say about this scene is that Lonnie, when he introduces Tommy, he goes, I used to give this guy a hard time when we were kids. And I'm like, why are you overly... Just the fact that you're Lonnie and now you're friends with Tommy is enough. Like, anyone who cares about who you are and recognizes the name from the first movie will be like, oh, hey, they're friends now. They grew up. He matured. They're not assholes to each other anymore. That's nice, right? Instead, they have to be like, I used to bully him, just so you remember who I am.
Just in case, like, you don't want that one fan to be like, in the first movie, they clearly were enemies, but now they're friends. Can you explain why that, like... All right, but here's something I want to talk about, and I guess we can start here because it really is a big part of the movie and permeates the whole film. But I don't find it believable that Michael Myers has had like such a grip on this town and these people, like the way, like obviously they were through a very traumatic experience, but it was like 40 years ago, and it's not just them, like, because by the end of the movie, they make it seem like, the whole town has been living in fear of Michael Myers like for years, and I just don't understand why, because he was like, locked up for 40 years. Like at what point do people start thinking like why does everyone seem like they were expecting him to break out? You know what I mean? Like, if the sequels were intact, I would understand, because it's like, oh, he's done this like 5 times already. Like, we got to be ready. But they're not. It's just the one movie that, I mean, obviously 2018 happened, so maybe people are starting to hear about that. But before then, though, like, why would people be like, so scared of him?
Maybe if you look at the ages of everyone who gets in the mob later, maybe you could say, oh, they're all at least in their 40s, so they're old enough to remember, at least as kids, the hysteria of the original incident, right? Because like everyone who's under 40 really shouldn't really have this weird like connection to it in the same way, because they weren't around, like,
I don't know. It's just so weird. It's just like, I don't know, like, are there people still in like, San Francisco or whatever that are afraid of the Zodiac killer? Like, like, it's weird.
Well, I think that's maybe the argument is going to be it's a small town, right? So it lingers more, right? I think this goes back to what you were saying earlier, though, about them making everything feel important, is that they're treating the legacy and the aura of the shape of Michael Myers like we do as a cinema audience. They're trying to have the characters in the movie feel like we do about the movie itself. And the problem with that is it just doesn't actually work. It just doesn't make sense, because it wasn't like, there's a character in the first movie, the shitty boyfriend character, not the main shitty boyfriend, the other shitty boyfriend, who died in the first movie. He had a line in the first movie was like, "What? So some dude with a knife killed 5 people? Like, that's nothing compared to what happens like on a monthly basis these days." And he kind of had a point. So yeah, that's.
I like they, like growing up, there have been people that like like died in my town, but like I don't remember it.
Yeah, I certainly don't remember the perpetrators' names of any like murders that were local.
And yes, if it was a big serial killer, like obviously that it would probably be something that would stick with you. But again, just like to the point where it's like, yeah, we have like these survivor groups, and again, like in this beginning like thing, it's not as big a deal, but then it, like we're saying, like by the end of the movie, it feels like the whole town has been riled up, and then like, this has been Michael's plan like all along. Like it's just so stupid, and again, it just annoys me with erasing the sequels, because this is a plot line that I feel like would make much more sense if you had all these other sequels intact, where it's like, well, no, this is like happens every decade, and people are bracing themselves for it or whatever.
The problem I have is that this would be fine conceptually. Okay, so Tommy, Lindsay, the kids from the first movie, and maybe Lonnie as well included. Like if you're going to retcon that he also had a moment with Myers, and he kind of did. He ran into him in the first movie, if you remember that. There's a moment where when he runs away from Tommy, he actually runs into Michael outside the fence, and it's not a big moment, but it is there. But you retcon a moment for him. So okay, so all these kids who knew each other, they're the same age, and they lived through this trauma because they did. I mean, two of them were there that night, and they remember all their, some of them, in some cases, maybe big brothers and sisters got killed, whatever it was. Okay, fine. I buy that they maybe started a tradition where every Halloween, because it's kind of been ruined for them because of that incident, maybe they get together, and I buy that Tommy maybe always makes a speech, and I would buy that maybe the bar guy and maybe like the local crowd who know who he is, like always entertain him and give him a little clap and sort of say, yeah, sure, like whatever. But it's presented in a way where they all take it very seriously. It's presented in a way where no one's going like I'm not saying he should come across as Crazy Ralph from Friday the 13th, but he should come off a little bit as like, oh, that's kind of, you feel a little sorry for him. Like he's still making speeches, he's still like so tied to this incident, he's not getting over it. That would feel a bit more realistic. Instead, Tommy's just this angry guy the whole time. He's always got this intense face aggro on. He's never got any expression that isn't just, I'm still haunted by that night, and I'm going to go after Michael Myers with a baseball bat, because that'll work. Yeah, because guns, knives, and everything else hasn't worked, so a baseball bat or an iron, as one lady tries later on in the movie, apparently. So
I missed that the first time, but I saw other people talking about it. I was like, oh, gee, that's so weird. And like the whole bat thing, it's so weird, like because it feels like there should be some like significance to it, but there's not. It's just like this weird little like detail
he clings to it.
And I did really laugh, like so at one point when they think Michael Myers is outside the barn, like they run out, he grabs the bat and they runs out, and then again, I can't swear, but like you just hear someone in the background that goes like, F him up, Tommy Doyle. Like it's like, first it's like they're using their whole name just in case, like, oh yeah, you forgot this is a character from the first movie, and then it's also just like someone like cheering him on, like yeah, get him.
remember Tommy Doyle, remember him. Yeah, that's him. It's actually here. It's basically when he toasts Laurie that it finally cuts to Laurie and the family on the truck, and let him, which to be as a standalone little moment, her yelling "let him burn," I like, because I said I liked that teaser when it came out, and it is a good idea. This little moment's fine. And
one thing I will give these movies credit for, the last one did it, and then this one did it. Even though I not great movies, they always do leave me at the end wondering what's going to happen next. So I mean, especially this one, we'll get to that. But then like in the last one, I was like, okay, like he's stuck in this building burning. I am curious about how he's going to get out to it. The answer is not very satisfying.
Well, so well, yeah, I guess that's what we're getting to.
I do like that line though, like you're saying.
Yeah. The one complaint I have about this though, it's kind of retroactively ruined a little bit, because for some reason they never even, like, Laurie and the girls both just believe that Michael's defeated for a bit, and obviously it's not true, and eventually two of them find out, and then Laurie's a little bit later, but like, you yelled "let him burn" and were worried that they were going to save him, and yet you just assumed he was destroyed and killed when you got to the hospital. That felt a bit weird and inconsistent to me, but
that's weird. Minor
in the grand scheme of things, but weird. So yes, we have to get to Michael versus the fire brigade. So the firefighters come to Laurie's house. They're trying to put the fires. Everything's ablaze. It's it's like hell. And that's when they were sitting writing the script, you knew that that asshole Danny McBride and David Gordon Green were sitting there going, "Oh, it's like he's walking out of hell. He's coming out of hell. He's rising from hell." That's the spiritual symbolism of all this. Right, so yeah, firefighter falls through the floor and calls for help. Michael comes out, kills him with whatever tool he had. I don't even know what you call it. It's kind of pickaxe-esque, but it's not quite that. Yeah. It's like an L-shaped thing at the end. But regardless, I'm sure people who know their tools will be like, "This is what this is." But
and this is like just like again, like we're just straight up doing action scenes now.
Yes, yes. Right, and so okay, fine. He walks out, he kills this one guy, and then a firefighter, another guy, comes to help him, puts his hand out, and you see Michael's hand come up, and it cuts away. Okay, fine. That's a fine way to end that scene. Okay. Yeah. I don't really have that. I mean, I wasn't in love with the way it was shot, but I didn't really have many complaints so far.
Sure.
But then you have Michael walking out in slow motion. How many times, might I ask you, do you think Halloween 1978? How many times do you think that movie had slow motion in it?
I'm gonna guess 0.
Now I don't know for sure. I haven't checked. I haven't watched it with a fine-tooth comb. But I do not believe that film had slow motion. And if it did, it was very subtle because I don't remember it. And I've seen it a lot.
I mean, again, that movie understands, and John Carpenter understands, which is why he's very good at what he does. Is he understands it's much scarier to have him off in the distance, have him hiding in the shadows. He, is this like scary creature that like you kind of see out of the corner of your eye. He's not someone that's walking in slow motion in this big fiery background with musical stings and stuff like that. Just it takes away any mystical.
Tim, scary guys don't look at explosions.
Oh. Okay, that's true.
No, so we have this scene. He walks out and he's actually holding this tool still in his hand, like he's like getting ready for a fight. It's like we're gearing up for like an action scene, and all the firefighters are sort of looking at each other going, "Oh shit!" Like they clearly know enough about the legend of Michael Myers that they're like, "Shit, okay, one guy's got his axe ready," and what I thought was
one guy's just spraying them with the hose.
Well, that was the thing. Like 2 or 3 of them like get actual weapons ready that could be used as proper defense items, and they just stand there and watch as the guy with the hose just hits them with some water as if that's going to do it. And sure enough, he's the first one to get killed. And we have this scene of Michael killing everyone at the scene, and there's like wide shots that you see here, and it is very quickly cut, but there's wide shots here where Michael's like blocking attacks and then like swinging, and it's like mystique. Michael Myers, the shape, has a mystique, and you're chipping away at it. And the biggest problem I have with this scene though isn't even necessarily about the scene itself. It's more about the fact that when we get to the ending, right? Because a big part of the ending is the idea that if you trick Michael into a situation where he's out of his comfort zone, because again, on paper, this concept is actually really good, right? Michael always stalks alone. He waits until you're alone, and low numbers, he's in the shadows, he comes out and he kills you when it's safe for him to do so. And that's partly why he's so menacing, is he waits, right? He waited for 15 years before he came home. Like Michael waits. That's the way he does. And the idea,
I'm telling you, Jerry, he's a waiter.
And the idea that to beat Michael, if you trick him into a situation where he's surrounded by people, you might actually have a chance, and that takes him out of his comfort zone. And that's a big part of what the ending, and we'll get to that properly at the end. Do you know what ruins that idea? Well, you have him do it at the start of the fucking movie. You've already seen it. By the time we get to the ending and the big plan plays out, we've already seen it. We've seen him like block attacks and like revert and like tact. He turns a buzzsaw back onto one of them. He straight up blocks kicks and hits and things, and it's not quite John Wick yet. We're getting to the John Wick stuff later, but it is an action scene, right? And it's funny that not that long after Malignant, we're sitting here talking about Michael Myers in an action scene.
So I got a couple things to say. First of all, I don't know if you want to take the the time down in case you need to edit out.
I'll bleep myself. Yes.
But first of all, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I will defer to you as the Halloween expert. But I feel like John Carpenter, he wasn't afraid to also show like Michael Myers get hurt. Like the end of the first Halloween, he gets shot and he like flies back, and I feel like we could do that here. Like if you're spraying him with like a high pressure hose that's meant to douse fires, that like yeah, he would stumble back. He's not the Terminator, and then yeah, it just takes out like any just like sense of dread or anything when. And it gets worse later on, but like you said, and we've been talking about, like, yeah, they just turned him into John Wick, where he's just like unstoppable, and he's like, turning all the weapons.
And I think, to be fair, because I know people are going to say it, yes, don't get me wrong, the original Halloween does push the boundaries of believability, because he does get stabbed in the eye and then he gets back up. He does get stabbed again, he gets back up. He gets shot 6 times and he disappears for the final shot. Yes, there is a suspension of disbelief. There is an element of, okay, at the end of the film, you might believe maybe, just maybe, there's something supernatural about him. Cut to black, and I always say that Halloween 2 and 4, will I enjoy them? I will enjoy H2O. I still, when I watch Halloween, the first one, I still think of it as a standalone movie that has no continuation. Sure. Everything else is basically fan fiction, right? Everything else basically is.
Should have been an anthology.
At the end of the movie, like, that's how I like to imagine the story's ended. Is just he disappeared into the night, and he can't kill the boogeyman. He can't kill evil, right? Cool.
Yeah.
So you have this ridiculous, over-the-top scene, and this is the thing, where if this was a silly slasher movie that just wanted to be a silly slasher movie, I wouldn't necessarily think Michael's the right fit, but maybe I could get into the carnage a little bit. Maybe I could get into it some more.
Right.
But we got stuff to get to, man.
I just one last thing about it. Did you hear that there were like people online that were starting a petition to cut this scene out because they didn't like him killing firefighters?
Trust me, Michael's pretty equal opportunity when it comes to murdering people. I don't think it matters.
I mean, again, I don't want to get into a huge rant, but there's just such a weird way people, I don't know, how they view like art nowadays, where it's like, well, I don't know, like people like really think like everything has to like reflect like real life and stuff, and it's like, it's just a movie. Calm down. I can assure you, no actual.
Firefighters were harmed in the making of this movie.
Like it's so bizarre. And how dare Michael Myers disrespect?
It feels like made up outrage. It feels like the crowd that normally complain about people being too woke making up something to be outraged about that kind of mimics and maybe even mocks what other outrage is, but is clearly silly and has no value. I don't know, it's weird. Anyway,
God, yeah, I mean, God, we're barely into it.
I feel like the later stuff will be quicker though, because like we're kind of like bringing up a lot of the themes and problems with these things.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of have to go to the bathroom, but we'll see if we can make it before I need a bathroom break.
Or we can pause. We can have a pause if you want.
No, we're good. We're good for now.
We're good for now.
We'll see.
So, from here they get to the hospital. For some reason they're really gratuitous with like Laurie having surgery where you can see like her intestines at one point. Like, whatever. They do have a moment where like Karen, Judy Greer's character, realizes that her husband's dead and looks at her wedding ring, and Allison like kind of realizes that her dad's dead, and they kind of hug and whatever, right? Fine.
Also, I don't think I really noticed it like the first movie, but like, I don't know, is the name Karen just ruined for any character now? Because I can't hear it without thinking.
Actually, Tim, I don't know if I always say it's intentional per se, but I do think that it is kind of mildly amusing. As much as I think all of it fails to like do what it's supposed to do, I do think it's kind of amusing that when everyone's freaking out later in the movie and mass hysteria is taking over and everyone's letting their emotions take over, I do think it's funny that the person called Karen is the only one who's trying to like be sensible and keep a level head. I do think that's a little bit funny.
Yeah.
So that might be intentional, it might not be. I'm not actually sure, but I'll give them that. But I know what you mean. The name Karen, it's hard not to just. There's a stereotype to that name now, and it's like there's so many people named Karen who can't escape the fact that they're named Karen. It's just it's not their fault. So
I'm not like big into like the I guess like the Halloween fan community. So I don't really know like all the ins and outs about some of the things people say about the other movies, but what I kind of gathered from seeing people talking about this movie, that the original Halloween 2, people I guess a common complaint people had about that was that Laurie was just stuck in the hospital the whole time, not really doing much. So you think like the filmmakers would probably know that and learn from that, right?
Laurie in this movie never leaves the hospital once she gets there.
Yeah.
she's actually pretty sidelined. She's not really involved in the main plot at all.
And
once we get there,
I don't understand. Like, is this stuff? Is this like a coincidence, or is it intentional? Like, are they intentionally trying to like mimic beats from these other movies?
I'll say it blatantly right now. I think the original Halloween 2 is a better Halloween at the hospital movie than this movie is.
Sure.
I think Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, actually, it's not like amazing by any means, but I think it does a better job of the mob kills an innocent person and factors it into the plot better than this movie does it. I think that Halloween H2O has and this is funny because Halloween H2O I would not describe as a subtle film or a nuanced film. I would say that it is kind of hammy in places. But I actually think compared to these movies, it actually does a much more kind of believable version of a middle-aged Laurie Strode, kind of like, oh, she's got a bit of a drinking problem because, that did mess her up as a kid, but she's not like turned into like some weird demented Sarah Connor who's obsessed with the idea that he's coming back for her someday. So yes. So what I'm trying to say is that 2, 4 and H2O are all better than this movie.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
And this movie takes elements of all of those. So, take what you will. So we go back to the bar around here, and this is when Lonnie gets a call from his son Cameron, the shitty boyfriend, so he goes to meet Cameron. This is where they first find out about some stuff. It's on the news around here as well. And the couple, right, the doctor-nurse couple, they're like, shit, that kid from the first movie who's on the news, he lives across the street from us. Shit, that's our neighborhood. We better get home and, do stuff. And they go out to their car, and he's like, oh shit, my stethoscope. I left that with a nurse lady from the first movie. Let me go grab it. And we have a scene where the wife gets into the car, and I'm going to call her the nurse because she's in a nurse outfit, even though that's not what she really is. But just for the sake of simplicity, she's the nurse, and the husband's the doctor. She gets in the car, and like someone sits up in the back seat, and she gets out. But this movie and the first movie have been so like quick to show you Michael's face in every single scene that he's in, that you immediately know as the viewer that this is not Michael, that this is not the shape.
Yeah.
Right? So they run out, and this is, one of the main problems of the movie is that the characters never stop bantering. They never stop talking. There's constantly discussing what they're doing. She says, go and check and see if that's really Michael Myers in the car. And he's like, are you for real? Or something like that. And then they go in and get help, and Tommy gets the baseball bat, and it's like a big intense close-up of him gripping the bat, and he's like, yeah. And he's got dramatic lighting on his face as he's walking towards the car. And the car drives off, and we see it's actually one of the other escaped inmates from the bus, right? That Michael was on.
Yeah, it's really weird how they do it, because like the car like drives off, and it drives very erratically and into
it crashes immediately,
like transformer. Yeah. But then it's like you don't see the guy actually get out of the car. He kind of just like pops up like in the corner. Like, I don't know, it's very weird. It almost seems like a cartoon, like the way it happens. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I will refer to this guy now as the Penguin, just because. Yeah, he's kind of short, he's kind of round, he's got kind of that Danny DeVito hairline from the Batman Returns movie. He's got a lot of those vibes, and he kind of wobbles along, which is fine in this scene because they never really see him walk around like that. They just see like a figure in the car. Later on, though, when everyone's convinced he's Michael Myers, I'm going to bring this up. Just don't you worry.
I mean, yeah, we got it. Like, this whole subplot is like, I don't know. I feel like it broke my brain. Like, it is so stupid, and like the idea that anyone would like actively believe this and they would treat it so dramatic, and it feels like you just feel like the
Michael Myers, I mean, he's not Rob Zombie Michael Myers tall, but he's like a 6'5" or something like that, dude. He's a tall man.
Yeah, and they say like, and at one point someone's like, oh, well, he always wears a mask, we don't know what he looked like. not true. He spent like 40 years in a prison. Like, I'm sure they would have photographs. There would be so many, especially nowadays, there would be so many Netflix specials.
Two points on this. First of all, they show his photo on the news at the start of the movie. See, when they're watching the news and they're saying that these people escaped from the bus, you can tell it's him, because they always show him out of focus whenever he's not wearing the mask. Like, after it shows you the penguin guy, you can clearly see it switches to Michael, but they obscure it, right? So it's on the news, and Tommy's literally watching it. And second point is that a massive plot point in the last movie was the fact that Michael finally got his mask back after 40 years of not having it because of those dumb podcast characters, okay?
Right.
So
people would know, but I mean, even that aside, even if people didn't know him with the mask, like, yeah, you can tell between like this like giant 6 foot muscular person versus this guy with penguin features, as you put it.
Like, yeah, I don't even know if I call him muscular, but at least he's in good shape for his age, right? Yeah. He's a tall man in good shape who looks strong, and then you've got this guy who's legitimately waddling around when he walks and runs. It's really quite something else to behold. And it's not like, and I know people have said, they like what this movie's saying because they believe that people would be this stupid, because if anything's taught as a society is stupid. And you know what, I agree. I do actually believe on some level that some people are this stupid. Sadly, what I've seen in the last couple of years has convinced me that people can be that stupid. Here's my point though. It's a movie. I'm supposed to like at least some of these characters. And for me to like some of these characters, they have to be intelligent. They have to be people worth rooting for. And no one in this movie is worth rooting for.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So
they're all very annoying. You can all see like the mistakes they're making like a mile away.
Yeah. Which I think is a perfect segue into our first random kill scene, which is the couple. The Michael just storms into, I guess it's just on the way into town.
This is like the older couple with the drone.
Yeah, so it's this older couple, black wife, white husband, and again they've got a lot of weird banter. Like there's a moment where they're saying, "Oh, we can see Laurie Strode's house burning from here," and the wife says something like, don't badmouth her because she'll F you up. Like she has like this weird line, and I'm like, this isn't funny. And then he's like, here, where I get some wine and gets frisky, my wife, like.
Yeah, I don't like every character that gets killed in this has to have like these little quirks. Like, I don't know, they feel like these weird sketch characters, and I kind of hate it, honestly. I think there's some people that like it because like
that's the phrase that I would use, sketch characters. They feel like they're out of a sketch comedy bit. And
I've seen people saying like, not so much these characters, but I know like I've seen people online being like, okay, but like even if you don't like the movie, you gotta admit like Big John and Little John are great, right? And I'm like, no,
I hate them. I hate them.
They're like annoying. They're cartoon. Like everyone in this just felt like a dumb cartoon character that we spend so much time with before they get killed, because it's like they're complete random characters, but I guess like they want you to feel something before they die. But it's so stupid.
Which in theory that's fine, but this is not the way to do it. They feel like. They feel like modern comedy sketch characters because they just banter constantly, and it just feels out of place. And the joke always does seem to be as well that it's always a couple who, like, because the joke here almost is like, hey, old people have sex still. They're going to have sex. Isn't that kind of funny? These old people are still going to get it on. Like, not really. Like, of course they still have sex. Like, no one's debating this.
Who cares?
But she's playing with a drone, and the drone flies into where Michael is, and they're like, wait, is someone there? And they freak out a little bit. And
I mean, like, again, like, I think maybe some kind of cool horror ideas, like, playing with the drone and then, like, it just stops and not knowing why. Like, okay, it's kind of cool. And, like, I don't know, like, some of the kills, like, again, this movie is very violent, which I don't know if this is weird to say, but, like, gory, brutal, over-the-top violence doesn't really sound like Halloween to me. Maybe Rob Zombie's Halloween, but
no, I agree. It feels more like a Jason Voorhees thing. I mean, I'm not saying that Michael Myers, because I would describe the deaths as overly cruel, and it's not like he's humane in like Halloween. I'm not saying that at all. Like I say, if the movie just had a silly B-movie slasher tone, I could probably just get on board with them being more violent and whatever. But yeah, these deaths are like so over the top. Like So again, there's some more random dialogue where I think when he tries to trap Michael in the other room, the husband yells something like, "He seems really pissed off about something." Later, he has to like say some sort of line like that. Michael grabs him and he sort of rams his head a bit, and he chases after the wife who tries to like get out but can't unlock her own door. And Michael takes the time to look over and like grab like a light tube off the wall, smashes it, and then goes over and stabs him in the neck, and the blood starts to fill up the light tube. And again, in a different tone, I could be really into this death, but I'd be like, "Oh, fun, light tube, blood," like, you know.
And I mean, this movie, it constantly feels like whiplash because you're going back and forth between like
the tone,
these serious monologues to like these goofy characters to this over the top gory kill, and it's just like I cannot get a consistent sense for what the movie is trying to be, and it's very weird. I don't think it works, and like I guess.
I think the one moment here that almost feels like it's maybe kind of Halloween. I mean, it's more gratuitous than Halloween was, but there's a moment where she's kind of not quite dead and she's sort of witnessing her husband like be stabbed. Like Michael's just sort of like taking multiple knives and just stabbing him in the back. And part of me's thinking this is again just over the top for the sake of over the topness, but part of me's also thinking like, well, Michael did kind of like display his victims a little bit, and he did have a bit of showmanship. And I'm like, you know, this idea that he's just taking knife after knife and just stabbing them in the back to like just basically just to pin him to the counter is like, okay,
that's kind of an interesting thing to show,
especially since it's out of focus. You know, it's kind of like her perspective, so it's all sort of blurry, so it's kind of like obscured a little bit. And then he takes the last knife and he walks out with that one. Like that was the only moment in the whole scene that kind of felt like, oh, that was a little bit like The Shape. Like I got a little bit of The Shape there from that moment.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it's something.
Yeah, and again, stuff like the light tube when you're stabbing her with the light bulb or whatever. Like, again, like in other horror movies, I feel like that would be really cool. It just feels like maybe not the kind of stuff I want to see from Michael Myers, and I don't know. It's just a little odd.
Yeah, it was actually a great example later on. Because I know some people say, because some of the sequels before this did get a little bit more gory, and I think to varying degrees it can work in some cases, you know, but I didn't necessarily hold the sequels up to the standard of the original. We're compared to the original because it's the one to compare it to. Like if I'm comparing this to say Halloween 4, which I really like, which does have a crappy mask and does have some kills that feel a bit overly, you know, Jason Voorhees-esque. One of which is and this is the one that I'm going to compare it to later, but there's, you know, at the start of Halloween 4, he sticks his thumb through someone's forehead.
Oh, right. Yeah.
This movie has a scene of him sticking his thumbs in someone's eyes, but it keeps going until the eyes pop out and they're dangling from his face. And it's like this is like excessive. And it's an example of modern movies. Everything has to be bigger. Everything has to be in excess. And that's what these new Halloween movies feel like, is that there has to be tons of blood and kills and gore and everything, like all the time. There has to be scenes where he's facing off against 20 people because bigger, newer is bigger.
Like I don't know, it feels like a comic book problem where it's like, you know, when you have like I mean, if you're looking at like Spider-Man or something, like, you know, when they get to like the third Spider-Man movie and I'm talking about like the new Spider-Mans now, where it's like, oh yeah, we can't just have a villain anymore, like now we have to have like all these like multiverse dimensional stuff going on, bringing back all these villains. Like it has to be bigger, it has to be over the top, you know, we can't just redo the same thing. And I don't know, I'm not crazy about it.
So yeah, I guess we'll talk. I mean, I was talking about Big John's death there, effectively. So I guess we can. We'll be skipping over a key Michael scene, but I think we can just talk about all the Big and Little John stuff just now, because just to keep it together. So we introduce to them, and it's, I guess the joke is they're kind of a weird couple, because like one's like older and more posh looking, the other one's more of just like a pothead. So it's kind of a weird pairing.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of like, you know, hey, like let's look at who lives in the Myers house now, and I like that they spook the kids by saying like, oh, do you know what house this is? Like, I think that's one instance where, like, I don't know, that kind of like someone like referencing Michael Myers like kind of works for me. But yeah, just a lot of other stuff about it just feels like weird and comical. Like, I don't know.
Well, let's go back to what you said before. They feel like sketch comedy characters, especially Big John. He feels, and he's in the Righteous Gemstones, and like he's fine in that show in that right context.
He's a good actor, yeah. Like,
but here he feels like just such a sketch character, and so these kids like trick or treat, but they kind of trick them into coming out the house so one of the kids can go in and steal all the candy, and that's when Big John goes into this speech of like, do you know who used to live here? Michael Effin Meyer. And it was a bit over the top, but then he leans in and goes, and he stabbed his sister in the tit. And I'm like, okay, now like I kind of laughed a little bit, but not in a way that I liked that the movie did that. Like it was like, okay, this is just this is a Danny McBride character from one of his shows. This is not totally a character who belongs in Halloween.
Yeah, and again, it just feels like out of place. Like it doesn't feel natural. Like I hate to keep going back to it, but like all the dialogue in like the original Halloween, it all just feels very natural. Like the way again, like except for Loomis or something, which is very over the top, but that works for that character. But like here, I mean, just the way like they refer to each other as like Big John, Little John, like I like, do you know how many times I actually say my wife's name? like most days I don't, because you just, when you're talking to your partner or a friend or something, like you just talk to them, you aren't constantly going like, hey, my, especially like with a nickname, like, hey, Big John, hey, Little John. And isn't it so funny that, they both have this, same name? But
Tim, you could literally forget your wife's name and get away with it for like a month. You'd have like a month to remember it before it would come up. Totally. Like that's... forcing characters to say other characters' names and things is one of the sort of the tricks to writing. That is quite tough because it's actually quite unnatural unless you're meeting someone for the first time to have a reason to say someone's name like constantly. It is tough to do it.
Yeah.
So
very strange.
Basically we're introduced them in this scene so that we have context later why Michael shows up here, because it's his house. And he kills Big John and then Little John. Honestly, I mean, also Big John, before he gets his eyes thumbed out, he actually gets stabbed in the armpit, which again feels like a funny kill to me. Like I almost started laughing because it's such a funny place to be stabbed. As silly as that sounds, but
and do you want to say the line that was it Little John says before he dies?
Go on. I don't remember.
I believe I forget at this point if they had talked about like the whole thing with him staring out the window. I don't know why this is like a thing in this movie about people like constantly referencing like how he stared out his sister's window or whatever. But I believe so you have Big John, which of course Big John is like the littler one, and then Little John is the bigger one.
Also part of the joke, of course, is the wrong
So after like Big John is dead, and then Little John I think goes into like the sister's room and sees Michael Myers there, and then I mean correct me if I'm wrong, you saw it twice, but doesn't he say like he came home or something like that?
He goes, Michael, you've come home.
Yeah. Again, like no one would ever say that in real life. The only reason why they're saying it here is because that was the tagline from the first movie, right?
Yeah, the night he came home. Yeah.
That stuff infuriates me so much because it's so unnatural. And I mean, again, like, who I said a million times, but it's just like, for fans being like, hey, remember, like, that's a thing. Like, remember that was on the poster. That's a thing people say when they talk about this movie. Like,
it just makes it feel hokey. Say that. Yeah, it just feels so hokey. And it feels insincere, like, constantly because of it. But there's another Michael scene before this though, in between the two John scenes that we do have to address. So part of the squad that roll out to go looking for Michael once they know he's on the streets, right? They go to the park. And it's the doctor, the nurse from the first movie, the doctor and nurse who go with them because they're on team Find Michael now. For some reason, it's Lindsay.
It feels like they were such a tight knit group at the bar, but then like Tommy like doesn't see him the rest of the movie.
Yeah, Tommy's off recruiting. We get a montage of Tommy going around like recruiting tough men.
Oh, I forgot about that scene. It's so dumb. Like, and again, another thing where like. I mean, maybe it's different in like small town where people know him or whatever, but if some guy just came up to me being like, yeah, there's a killer on the loose, come on, let's go, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, call the police, calm down, go inside where it's safe.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do like a spoof of this movie at this point, you'd redo this scene and just have them go, Michael who?
Yeah.
Who?
And
like Shrek? What?
It doesn't. He says something like really cheesy too. Like, doesn't he say like, "I'm looking for like righteous men or good men" or something like that? Like,
I'm looking for men who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. That was the line.
So stupid, my God.
Which sounds really dodgy when you think about it. It sounds like what sort of criminal activity are you asking for us to partake in here? Good sir.
But of course, this fulfills the longtime fantasy of many a Halloween fan who always wished, man, I just want to see Nurse Marion team up with Lindsay Wallace and
and two new characters, yes.
And two new characters.
Yeah, that scene is like, I mean, one of the things that I've seen people complain about with the Big and Little John is that they really are dumb for staying in the house when they think someone's in there, given like where they live and given like who it probably is. Right, let's be honest, who it probably is. You know, like, and it's a similar thing here, and I tend to kind of be forgiving in slasher movies and horror movies in general when it's like, why didn't a character just do this instead of this? Because like, okay, you know what, they're scared, like they're not thinking straight. I make dumb choices all the time. It's fine. Sure. But there is definitely a couple of moments here where like, why don't you just start the car? Like, you've got time here to just start the car and just drive away at this point. For sure. But they run into the kids who are being awful to the Johns, right? And
all the kids are wearing the Halloween 3 masks.
Yes. And these are two awful little kids. These are two little shits, right?
Oh yeah, they suck. Yeah.
And Lindsay comes over to talk to them, and unlike Tommy, Lindsay, I believe, is the actress who played Lindsay in the original. And I think it's because she actually went on to become like a real housewife of one of those places, like one of those shows.
Really?
Yeah, she's on a reality TV show. She's actually a celebrity for another reason now.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Wow. I heard this, yes.
Okay. So I was gonna say, like, I thought, like, oh wow, like, you know, she like looks pretty good. But I guess I'd explain it. If you're a real housewife, you probably.
I can only imagine the actor who played the original Tommy's pissed.
He's got to be mad, right?
He's been recast twice now. He's never been asked to come back and be the old version of himself. or Lonnie, to be fair. Assuming both of them are still alive, which to me, I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, it's possible or not, but
and I guess like he never had I guess he never had anyone play him, but I gotta imagine like there's if someone who thinks that they should be Ben Tramer that is also pissed.
Well, actually, this is a perfect time to bring up that joke I wanted to make earlier, but I couldn't without spoilers. Is that so? In Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2, Ben Tramer has this horrific accidental death that is hilarious. Right? Yeah. And I remember when we went to review it back when we were working through them, and we got to Halloween 2, and I'd forgotten this scene, which is Loomis sees Ben Tramer. He's wearing a Michael Myers-esque mask. And Loomis is ready to just open fire because it might be him, and the sheriff jumps out and says, "No, what you do? You can't just shoot random people on the street." Which good advice, might I add. Yeah. But unfortunately for Ben Tramer, another cop driving down the street doesn't see him, loses control, hits him with his car, pins him against a news van, which sets a flame, and he burns alive. Like, he has this ridiculous over-the-top death. That's Ben wild. Tramer, who is mentioned in this movie, but he's never shown, as far as I know. I do think it's a little bit funny that every other character they bring back from the original, other than Lindsay, I think, every other character dies horribly, except but Ben Tramer is fine. He left town. He's not here to be killed. So Ben Tramer got to live. The boy who lived, Ben Tramer.
So all the trick-or-treaters, they're scared off, they run away or whatever, and then
they're being little shits because they're saying, oh, some guy in a white mask is playing hide and seek with us, but you don't know if they actually seen him, or are they just being dicks because they know Michael Myers is a thing.
Yeah. And now so again, this is another scene I hated because it's just an homage to the first one, but you have Michael Myers attacking Marion like the same way he did in the first one when he reaches his hands through the window. Like, well,
it's not even just that. It's just the shot of him running up the back of the car is the same. The shot of the hand hitting the window so it like cracks is the same. It's like, but it's even the same character. Like you say, it's the exact same character from the original film.
Who is just like these movies also like weirdly gun heavy. Everyone has a gun in this movie. None of them seems to be able to shoot Michael. But
it's Haddonfield, baby. They all armed up after the original incident. Everyone's just ready.
I don't know, it's just weird. Just like a slasher movie where everyone is like armed.
And it's that hokey thing again. Not only is it a reference to the original, but like she takes the time. Like Mary Ann, she has a chance to shoot Michael finally, and she takes the time to stop and say, "This is for Dr. Loomis." And
God.
I just roll my eyes so much.
So stupid. It's so like again, it does not feel like characters saying this. Like this, it's feeling like this is like fans saying this. I just hate it so much.
If you want to get the idea that she wants revenge for Loomis, which doesn't even make that much sense because nothing bad.
It's not like they were like close in the original movie. It's not like you got the sense that they were like fans. And then also like, do we even know what happened to Loomis though? It's not like Michael Myers killed him.
It didn't seem like it from the flashback later, I don't think. Yeah. So, yeah.
Again, might make more sense if the sequels were intact and, you know.
Maybe Halloween Ends will have more Loomis flashbacks, Tim, and we'll get to see why she had to get revenge for Loomis.
I mean, that's got to be it. Jeez, I mean, we're already going so long, but it's like every time like we think of something, it's like,
I know it's so much.
This is something else we have to talk about. That's going to be a whole thing. Like,
there's so much, yeah.
Jeez.
But so just to get through the rest of this damn scene, so
I know you really want to talk about this. Like,
yeah, Michael comes in the car, he stabs Mary Ann repeatedly. By this point, Nurse Lady's like jumped out the window. Dr. Man like tries to like strangle Michael with his stethoscope.
Yeah,
nice try. He gets stabbed, and this is another really
right
gory
through
one.
the eye.
Yeah, it's like an awkward angle going up through the cheek and then through the eye, which is a really fun gore effect. Don't get me wrong. Like I think again, if this was like a Friday the 13th, I'd be like just kind of loving that probably.
Yeah.
Here it's like again, it's just like the tone's all over the place, so it's hard to really enjoy it. But fair enough.
Yeah.
And at this point, his wife, Nurse Lady, who's holding a gun, decides to, instead of keep going, despite the fact that clearly Michael's just murdered everyone else, decides to start coming back towards the car. But instead of getting close before having a good shot on Michael, just starts unloading the clip at the windows of the car and doesn't hit a damn thing. And then when she gets close enough, maybe she has bullets left, maybe she doesn't. It's hard to say. Well, she has one left at least, given what's about to happen. But she gets close to the car, and Michael, who's still kind of in the front seat and kind of like still kind of half lingering over Marion's dead body, pulls off what I can only describe is a John Wick maneuver. He kicks the car door that's sitting kind of open, and it hits her in a way where when she goes to shoot Michael, she actually shoots herself in the head. It's this quick kind of, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I started laughing hysterically because this is not only is it a stupid death, which could be fun, but it's like, wait, that was a John Wick move. Like he just pulled off a John Wick thing. What? Lindsay while this was going on, like assembled a bag of bricks to come in at Michael with.
I totally forgot about this. This was so strange. Like, yeah, she's just like it feels like it's taking forever.
I know.
Putting all these bricks in this bag. Very strange.
Like everyone's dead by the time she gets over it. He actually hit him.
Yeah.
And then he stalks her for a bit around the playground. I will say the end of this scene's okay, which is she finds a place to hide. And she actually does manage to get out of his line of sight, so he doesn't actually see her. So there's actually an almost good creepy moment of him walking over this little bridge looking around for her, and he can't see her, but we can see her in the bottom of the frame. Fine, like, I have no problems. Conceptually, this is a nice little moment.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the rest of the scene was absolute trash, but this moment was fine.
That's fine, yeah.
So that's most of the big Michael scenes before we get to the ending stuff, right?
Right.
Because the other stuff we have to talk about is Laurie, Allison, Karen at the hospital. Hawkins comes in. He ends up lying next to in the same hospital room as Laurie. And they reminisce because they kissed once or something.
I completely forgot about this. I guess, yeah.
He's like, oh, I remember that night, but you had a thing for Ben Tramer. Yes, that one. Yeah. Actually, do you know what annoys me is that, see when Laurie wakes up and she's talking to Karen for the first time, and I can't remember the context, right? But she calls Karen kiddo, and I actually, especially in the second viewing, I thought to myself, you know what? that was a good callback to the original, because that wasn't like a wink wink, it wasn't like some dramatic moment, it was just no, she referred to Tommy as kiddo a couple of times in the original. It's just part of how she speaks. It's part of her natural language. So when she called her kiddo, I actually did get like a good dose of nostalgia, because it felt like, oh no, Laurie did say that. That was just part of her speech patterns. That's natural.
I'm totally fine with that. Yeah,
didn't feel forced. It's a little thing, but that's a good example of it just slipping in there and not being in your face.
So one thing that I really wanted from the last movie that felt like a wasted opportunity is I did want to see more of this family unit, especially because, like, I love Laurie, but, like, you can't have every movie about her. So if you want to start these new movies and then kind of have her have like a send off, and then maybe have like Karen and the youngest star is Allison, I think. Like, have them kind of be like, new bigger characters. Like, that's fine. They're both like really good actresses. I like seeing them. So I was really hoping they're going to get a lot more to do in this movie, which I guess they kind of do, but they still don't really feel like main characters. No, well,
no one does. That was what rewatching the last one, I had the problem again where it felt like no one was the protagonist of the film.
Yeah.
In the same way that Laurie is definitely the main character of the first movie. This one is even worse. Like, this one is just jumping around so many people that no one feels like the main focus. And it's not like you can't have an ensemble like type of movie, but it feels a bit weird in this case, because it kind of feels like it's supposed to be Karen's movie, given the ending and given that her, but she has probably the biggest plot beats at certain points. But like, she's not focused on until like an hour into the movie. Like, we're 2/3 in before it starts to pay attention to her, really. I mean, there's like a funny beat when they're being questioned by the police, and like they have to tell Karen that Michael's not dead, and it cuts to Allison, who's also been like questioned at the same time, and she's like, "What?" But it's almost like it's almost like a funny cut, like to her like screaming "What?" And then shitty boyfriend shows up and like seems to like basically everything that they had a fight about almost seems irrelevant now because of everything that's going on. So it's just brushed aside. And it's not like I wanted resolution for that. It just kind of felt like, well, why did you make me sit through all that in the last movie, you bastards?
Yeah.
Because it sucked. Allison disappears for a long time because she goes with Cameron and Lonnie to hunt Michael Myers, which Karen rightfully says, no, my daughter's not hunting Michael Myers. That is a ridiculous idea, but she goes and does it anyway. We see them find like the aftermath of the playground stuff, right? Because they find Lindsay. But then, like, because the next time we cut to Allison and Lonnie and Cameron, I felt like I hadn't seen them in like half an hour. It was so long.
It feels like, and the movie is not super long. Like, it's less than 2 hours, right? It was like hour 40.
Hour 40, yeah.
But it feels like really long. Like, it felt like it just goes on forever, and it's it's weird how, like, for some reason every character feels like it's their responsibility to take Michael Myers down. It's like, like Laurie's like, it's my responsibility. And Tommy Doyle's like, no, I have to be the one to take him down. Allison's like, no, I'm gonna take him down. It's like, I don't know. It's just strange. Like, everyone feels like they have personal stakes here.
I hate this. Laurie especially at one point says, maybe I have to die too so he can die. And you and Allison shouldn't have to suffer from the evil that I created. How did you create it?
Why?
You had nothing to do with creating it. You were just a victim. Yeah. Like are you trying to argue that, like, because this is one of the things that I was thinking about as I was watching it, is that Halloween 2 I actually enjoy enough. I think it's a decent sequel.
Me too.
And the worst thing about it is the retcon of the whole brother-sister thing. Like, oh, Laurie's actually his sister. Like, that's the worst thing about it. And the weird thing is I don't think you need it. All you have to say is that Michael didn't like the fact that she got away, so he wants to finish the job, and just have that be the motive, and that's fine. And
a hot...
Oh, yeah, on you go, Tim. You can make a point.
All right, well, this might be a hot take because I know a lot of fans like it. I don't mind the sister reveal at all. I might even prefer it, maybe just because I don't know. I feel like I feel like when I came to the franchise, like, I already knew that, so I don't know. Maybe it just works for me. But whatever. But I don't mind that, and I feel like there has, if like, with these movies that they make Laurie such like a focal point that it's like I feel like you have to have a reason for that. And I don't know, I still think like the sister is a good reason, but yeah, if you're not going to do that, like you said, have at least something with her just being like, no, like he won't stop until he finishes like me because I was left alive that night or whatever, like.
Yeah, that might make some sense, and I almost kind of like one of the things they do here, which is that like Karen's convinced Michael's going to come to the hospital, only to like find out that no, he doesn't give a shit about Laurie. Like, 'cause that was the one thing I liked about the last one, is that no, he's this is not about him hunting someone in particular. This is just about him killing whoever. Like, he likes to just kill people. That's just what he does.
Well, I mean, we all know he has a pattern. He kills and then he goes back to his house.
Oh, shut up. No, but like that was one of the few things I liked about that last movie. And I like that Karen's convinced that he's going to come to the hospital like the original Halloween 2, only to find out, no, like that was the doctor who did that. It's kind of just convenient that Allison never mentioned that. And it's not until the sheriff or the officer Hawkins wakes up and like explains that to Laurie. So it's all kind of weird, but this is what leads to more flashbacks as well, where we see Loomis, who doesn't look too bad. Like, I think they keep him obscured enough. The CG for the de-aging or whatever is okay-ish.
Yeah, I honestly I was having trouble exactly understanding what they did. So that was CGI. I wasn't sure if they like.
Well, I mean, I don't know for sure. I didn't look up like how they did it. I'm just assuming that it's a different actor with a CG, like, you know, deep fake style thing or whatever.
It's so weird.
My bigger problem with the Loomis thing is that his voice was really bad, and which is weird because in the last film they had like a tape recording of him, and maybe this was some recording that actually existed that they could use. Like, they found something that he shot for one of the movies that they didn't use or something, and that's what. Because I remember thinking, and even just when I rewatched it last week, that this voice impersonator they've got for Loomis sounds quite good. He sounds like Donald Pleasance. It's a pretty good job. But this one sounded bad. Like, I thought, why isn't it just the same guy? If that was an impersonator you had, why isn't he doing the voice for this? Because it sounds terrible.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So that was odd. The whole thing is that the cops are going to kill Michael. Once again, Michael's surrounded by a bunch of people. They're going to kill him for what he's done, and Hawkins is the one that stops him, and he's felt guilty all these years because it could have ended that night, and it didn't, because he decided to be the good guy and not have them like take justice out of their own hands. Okay, could possibly be interesting. It's kind of a weird theme to have though, because like I like that in superhero movies and like Batman and things like that, because it's like, no, we're dealing with heroes and it's all about making the correct choice. But in a slasher movie where you've got an unstoppable killer, the idea that the lesson he's learned is that I should have let them like commit like vigilante justice, it just feels a bit weird.
and like, doesn't he actually say afterwards like, maybe I should have done it, and Laurie agrees?
Yeah, it's like, yes.
Which again is really weird when like after this movie comes out and you have like, you know, like the actors and like, you know, the director and stuff like talking about how, you know, the movie relates to like stuff like the protests and everything. It's like, all right, if you're trying to say like this movie is like related to like those kind of messages, it's really weird to have a part of your movie where a cop says he should have killed someone instead of arresting him, and then like someone else agreed. Like, this is really like doesn't feel like a thought out like message, if that's what you're trying to say.
Like I say, you can have Michael represent fears we have in society. You can talk about that and the spread of fear, but yeah, you're marking it up by like having all these things that feel like really bad messages to, like, I mean, they're fine enough in the context of the movie, but like you know, they're a bit murky when you start to actually kind of connect them to the real world a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, that's where some of the more of those flashback stuff comes from. We have to, I guess, talk about the mass hysteria scene.
This is so crazy.
So Tommy, after they find Lindsay and that, Tommy comes back to the hospital. Lonnie and that are still out there. There's like a quick scene where Lonnie admits they never went in the Myers house. This is one of these things that's such a quick scene that I'd forgotten about it until I rewatched it, because it's just, oh, you know, we always dare each other to go into the Myers house, and Lonnie's like, nah, I lied, I never went in. And it's like, oh, a bit of humanity to make us like him a little bit, I guess, and then back to the hospital. But Tommy's back at the hospital, and the sheriff, whenever you mention the sheriff, you know, the cowboy hat sheriff who was in the last movie, he's around. Right. He shows up. He's there. There's not much with him, but he's there. So, and the security guard at the hospital is the original sheriff from the first movie, Brackett. You know, he's like 95 years old or whatever he is now, but he's there. And there's a whole scene, and this is, you know, like, he works the crowd into a frenzy. He's, you know, the one of the kids' moms from the last movie's there, and she sees her dead son at one point. But he actually walks into the crowd at the hospital and says, "The boogeyman is at large." He actually says that is a line he says. And this is the thing. In the original movie, the boogeyman, the word, came from a kid teasing another kid. So it was on Tommy's mind. And then Tommy called Michael the boogeyman. And the whole point of Laurie saying it at the end is that she was so shaken and so traumatized by what just happened that it made her into a little kid again. And she said, you know, was that the boogeyman? And Loomis responds with that sort of wonderful performance by Donald Pleasance, where he just kind of goes, as a matter of fact, yeah, kind of, you know, it was the line, but you know, that, the sentiment is, you know what, it kind of was. That's kind of the sentiment, and it feels natural. It feels natural because of where it comes from, and it's not like. But they said it like 100 times in the last movie. This movie, like people at the bar calling the boogeyman, Tommy's saying the boogeyman's coming for you. Like, that's part of his speech at the start. He's like, the boogeyman is coming for you. And he's coming for me too.
So the thing that's so weird about this, like, going back to that, it's like he's making that speech, but also why is he like trying to scare people?
That's so well, it's because at the end of it, it's like, yes, but he won't get us though, because we'll fight back. Which, by the way, so in this scene, like scene in the hospital, it's Brackett who first yells, "Evil dies tonight," right? But that's not the first time it's said in the movie. It's actually, I think it's Marianne at the bar who, when they're going out with the baseball bat, when they think he's in the car, she says, that "Evil dies tonight," right? So it's said by two different characters in two different situations.
Well, it's that common phrase we all say.
Oh, sure, right? So then
whenever evil's about to die.
So then the crowd start chanting, "Evil dies tonight! Evil dies tonight!" Like, first of all, there's another movie. We know there's another movie, so we don't believe
so we know it doesn't. Well, I mean, we literally know it doesn't. He doesn't die by the end of the movie. I mean, other than the fact that there's another movie coming out, but
so really, really stupid. And then looking for like help because he's scared. The penguin, like hospital patient did, stumbles in, and someone, I guess someone sees the. Because on the back of his scrubs it says, Smith's Hospital, or the place they came from,
Smith's
right?
Grove.
And someone like catches a glimpse of him, and they start chasing him, and and as this is happening, like the music's getting intense. This piano music comes in at some point, and of course they run past Laurie and Karen, who see him and go, "Wait, that's not Michael. That's not even anything like Michael." Yeah. And they try to tell people, but the heavy-handed symbolism here is that they're basically trampling over them because they're not listening, because now the mob is like an entity that's been created that can't be stopped. It's a force that can't be reckoned with. And Karen actually somehow gets ahead of them, runs upstairs and finds them and says, "Hey, I know you're not the killer, and I'm going to help you. I'm not going to let them hurt you." And she tries to be like understanding and whatever, right?
It like turns into like E.T. or something for a minute, where it's like they're trying to like protect this like frightened creature that's like running away. It's so weird. It's so
it's so bizarre, and there's a couple of moments where Tommy's starting to, I think, doubt that it's him, because basically they get up to this moment where Karen gets to him and locks him, like tells him to lock the sort of the door stoppers, because if you've been in a hospital or a school, you'll be familiar with these, like the swing doors that have the little locks at the bottom. And basically he locks himself into this hallway where there's an entrance at either side, and the crowd's trying to get to him, and the piano's playing, and I can't remember if Jamie Lee Curtis is monologuing at this point, maybe not, but
I do think at this point she is running too, and I think she needs a doctor in the nuts.
Which opens her wound. It opens her surgical wound, and she's in pain at that point. Yes. This is correct.
But I thought it was like so funny. Like even the doctor was like, "No, we gotta get him," and she's like, "Shut up," and like knees him.
So we get this thing, and it starts to go into a lot of slow motion at this point, and I'm like, I know what's going to happen now because the movie is so blatantly in my face. Like there's no like subtlety here. This guy's about to commit suicide because he's scared of the mob, and then they're going to have to like bear witness to what they've done. And sure enough, he gets out in the window, and just as they're coming into the hallway, as they break in, he jumps to his death. And there's like a sad montage of like the sheriff sitting with that cowboy hat that he likes is sitting in front of him. Like Tommy's looking at him, the crowd's formed around this like dead body. And this was the moment I was talking about earlier, where you've got this big poignant, like in theory, and I don't think it's effective. I think it's like really heavy handed in your face.
No.
But you're trying to make this sad, bitter moment of like, this is what the hysteria, this is what Michael Myers, who's like the Joker to Haddonfield, right? Because this is the Dark Knight. This is the Joker trying to work up the city into hysteria, but it's done, well in that movie, right? Yeah. But the idea is that he's traumatized the city enough that they're turning on each other, and you even have Brackett, I think, says the line, "Look at him, he's turning us into monsters now," or something to that effect. It's like so like over your head, right, or into your head, and it cuts to a shot, and like this is the one death in the movie that do not cut to his body, because them looking in horror at what they've done to this innocent man is like going to be far more powerful than anything. Or if you are going to do it, it should just be like a high angle shot with just the body like looking there, maybe with a pool of blood, nothing else, right? Reserved, some restraint. And it cuts to his dead body, and his arm is separated from his body. The top of his head's been like busted, and not just busted open like he's been like cut. Like the top of his head's missing, and like his brains are spilled out onto the ground.
It looks like something out of like a trauma movie.
It looks like in Final Destination 2 when the kid gets the glass lands on him. It's like he had that death or something, where he's just been like, it's like he's. He's like, like in a video game and you're like Crash Bandicoot or something, and you've got the metal trap that's doing that, where it's like the floor and the roof are like smashing together. It's like he's caught in that.
It's like a cartoon. He's like flattened and like just like all it's so over the top and gory, and it is it's just obviously it's not intended to be. This is supposed to be such like big introspective poignant moment, but it's just so funny. Like everything about it is so over the top and ridiculous and so stupid, and no one would ever think this is Michael Myers in like a million years, and everyone is acting so aggressive and stupid, and like when someone could just very easily just be like, hey look, like that's obviously not him, everyone calm down. But it feels like they just wanted to have such a smart, deep moment, but it whiffs it so bad. And then like you said, cutting to his actual dead body, which is so over the top and gory and looks like a cartoon. It's not intended to be, but it's so goddamn funny.
The tone is so all over the place. They don't know how to achieve a tone. They just don't. And simple things like having maybe this character be a similar height to Michael might have been like a good start, just to be like, okay, I buy that someone sees that outfit he's wearing and goes, maybe that's him, and maybe he's a guy around the same age, so there's enough reasonable doubt to why people who don't know him his face well, that they would think it's him or something. That's a start.
Also, like someone like Tommy Doyle should be like, wait a minute, usually Michael doesn't like run and cower and hide and look scared. Like it feels like he knows that, like, he's the boogeyman. Like, would anyone think this guy is the boogeyman? Maybe the booger man, but
he's the penguin. He's Danny DeVito.
And now the big thing here, which is like so wild to me, is it seems like you said, like they want to have a message where like, see what happens when you let mob violence overtake you and you lose all rationality, and how bad mob mentality can be. Okay, that's an interesting message, but it feels really weird when we see what happens at the end of the movie.
Oh, well, I mean, I think the key point here, which neatly leads into the end of the movie, is that Karen, she was the one who tried to stop this. She's the one who's heartbroken about this guy jumping to his death, and she confronts Tommy, and Tommy's like, I know, I effed up, I'm sorry. And she's like, yeah, I tried to do the right thing, and my daughter's out there looking for this killer, and you helped put her on that path, and blah blah blah. And she's like, we have to do something, and he's like, okay, I've got a car, and it cuts from there, right? When they show up later, she's basically agreed to take part in more mob violence. It just so happens that the mob is at least targeting the right person this time. That is the only difference, but it's still, she's effectively agreed to do the thing that they almost just, well, they didn't almost do anything. They did, like, led an innocent man to his death. Like,
yeah, no, so it's a very weird message where it's like, mob violence is not okay, except sometimes. If you got the right person, sure, go for it.
Because it's when it cuts away from them here, it cuts to Allison and Lonnie and the shitty boyfriend and Cameron, I think his name was.
Yeah.
And this was the moment I went, wait, man, I've not seen you in like half an hour. It's been ages. like I felt like they were trying to set up that Allison was going to be like the main character when she was like picking up the shotgun out the back of the car, and she was like, shh, I'm going to go kill my evil dies tonight, bitches. Like, but we barely see her like after that. I mean, she's at the park when they find Lindsay, but other than that, like, that's it. And then we cut to them, and sure enough, just as Laurie is is it Laurie? Yeah, it's Laurie talking to Hawkins, and Hawkins, this is where he's like telling her about the doctor and stuff, and she's like, well, where is he going then if he wasn't going to my place, if he wasn't hunting me? It cuts straight to, it just so happens that Lonnie is saying the exact, he's going home, he's going to his house, because this is where he was, and he's going through this path. He kills, he goes home.
Was he the one that had a map? Like, someone actually took out a map.
Yes,
like,
that was Lonnie. Yeah. It cut to them with the map, because it was the same time that I think Laurie was having the conversation with or maybe it was maybe it was a scene with Karen where she was figuring it out, like realizing that's where he was going, so they have to go and like help the team. Or whatever, I don't know, but it just so happens that Lonnie's figuring this out at the exact same time. So they drive to the Myers house, and it's when he gets there he goes, you know what, maybe this was dumb bringing my teenage son and his girlfriend to the serial killer's den.
I know I haven't been a parent for super long, but I think it's not a smart move.
I'll tell you right now, Tim, if I ever get a hint that you're like Lonnie, I will call child services and have them take poor Wyatt away from you, because he's in danger.
We'll see if I don't know if we gotta hunt down Brahms or something.
Oh dear. So Lonnie goes on his own.
Gets killed somehow.
Yeah, within seconds he screams, and Allison and Cameron's like, oh, we agreed to be in the car, but screw this, let's just go. So they go in, they've both got guns, and they're going in themselves, they're creeping about the house, they find the Johns who are lying dead, and then Cameron finds his father crushed up in the attic door, dripping down blood, whatever, and he's like, Daddy! He gets really upset, and Michael comes out and starts stabbing the shit out of him. Cameron doesn't even get a chance of like shooting him. The gun's just like deflected immediately. Allison comes running out, also gets the gun like knocked out of her hand. Like, she's got a shotgun, it just gets knocked out of her hand, and she falls down the stairs. And
real quick with Cameron, yes. It's so weird because like the first movie made us hate him, and then it seemed like you were just waiting for Michael Myers to kill him, because it's like, oh yeah, like this dude sucks, like we're gonna see Michael Myers kill him, right? But then it doesn't happen. Then this movie, it feels like they're trying to redeem him, so it's like, oh okay, I guess we're supposed to like him now, and maybe he'll be a love interest again, and then it just like
you say tries, he never actually does anything of value or contributes to the movie in any way, shape or form. The only reason he exists is to give Allison this moment where when Michael's basically got his head in between like the stair rails, and he's just sort of like, and this actually felt like a Jason kill, because it was kind of a funny kill where he was like just putting his head up and down like inside the stair rail. That felt like a Jason, that was like Jason with a sleeping bag, right? That's what that feels like. But there's a moment here where she's, no, Jason, take me, I'm the one you want, kill me, Jason. And I'm like, look, if you want me to buy in and give a shit about her like effectively sacrificing herself to try and save him, then don't make it like, you made me hate him, and then you give me no reason to like him. in this movie, right? Admittedly, you give me no reason to like anyone in this movie, but that's like that's a more of a wide complaint. But the one part of this movie that I actually really kind of love is that this kind of works for a second, where Michael stops doing what he's doing. And Cameron's already pretty badly banged up at this point. Like he probably needs medical attention in the next 10 minutes, so he's probably going to die anyway. But Michael's walking down the stairs, and obviously his head's still sticking out the railing of the upper floor, right? So it's so as you're walking down the stairs, eventually he's kind of eye level where his head is, and Michael just stops walking as he reaches where Cameron is on his path down the stairs, just turns, and Allison goes, no, and he just takes his head and just spins it, Exorcist style. And I thought that, like, it's a little shapish, and it's maybe a little cruel, more Jason Voorhees funny death, but because I didn't like him from the last movie, and because at this point I was just ready to laugh at things when they were stupid, I kind of actually really liked this moment. Just this moment where it's like it's working, and he just stops and turns and kills him quickly. Yes, I will come and kill you, but just 1 second. Quick. Yeah. Dead. So, he comes down, he's she's trying to stop, she's got a knife and she's trying to stab him, and he's putting the knife into her shoulder, and she's like, do it, and she's actually talking to her mother. Karen's behind him with a pitchfork. For some reason
she does her classic gotcha line.
Oh, not yet.
Okay.
That's not yet. That's right. That's when this trap is sprung.
Right.
She stabs him with a pitchfork. For some reason, throws down the pitchfork, but she's able to grab his mask, and she's like, Michael, come get me, Michael.
Yeah, I think at this point, like, it might have been my wife that was like, she was like, why don't you just like chop off his head with that pitchfork or something like that.
At the very least, the fact that she moved it away, the fact that she threw it away and didn't even have a self-defense. I mean, I know she wants him to chase her, but it just felt a bit stupid. But Michael gives chase, and it makes a big moment of it. In terms of the score, this was one of the best moments of the score, where the theme kicked in as he started like stalking her right through the streets. And it was still cutting a bit too quick, but it wasn't like aggressively bad here as it had been. And it's all about leading them to a trap. And this is what I was talking about earlier, that this might actually be a really exciting idea for the end of a Halloween movie, that someone leads him into a trap where he's surrounded by lots of people with weapons who are ready to murder the shit out of him.
Yeah.
But the first time we saw him in this movie, it started with him facing a group of characters with weapons and winning. So why should I believe for a second that they stand a chance?
Like, also, it feels like, I mean, maybe it's because like the hospital was so small, but like it felt like there was so many people like in the hospital, and then like this, like the group is still big, but I don't know, it feels like smaller in comparison.
Yeah, and some of the weapons, like one guy's got a 2x4, one woman's brought an iron, like a clothes iron.
Yeah, that's like, I didn't notice it like on first watch, but yeah, like people have been pointing that out, and it is like, yeah, so weird. Like, there's got to be something better you can bring.
And this all intercuts with Laurie talking to Hawkins about I have to kill him, and we have to, evil has to die, and blah blah blah. And I used to think Michael was flesh, but every time he kills, he ascends, and it's fear. Blah. So we see Michael like get a couple of swings, and he slashes one guy's like wrist a bit, but they're able to shoot him and stab him. Karen stabs him once and goes back to see Allison, because Tommy's like, we've got this, Karen, you go and see your daughter, and we'll kill him. But of course, as Laurie's talking, and we've got the dramatic piano music as Laurie's monologuing about Michael and him ascending and whatnot, Michael gets back up and murders everyone that is around him. He kills Tommy, he kills everyone, and it's like, this didn't work. And like at this point, like, you have to just accept that he's more than human, because otherwise none of this works.
Yeah, and like I know like some people say like, oh well, like in that first movie he gets shot 6 times, and it's like, yeah, but I don't know, like there's something about it. I mean, and again, it's probably to the credit of John Carpenter, where it still feels believable, even though like, yes, you can say like, that's not likely that would happen, but whatever. This, it's like, yeah, there's no way anyone's getting up from this. Like, yeah, like they're shooting him like point blank. There's like, stab him in like the back of the neck or the top of the spine or whatever. Like, yeah.
I think the other thing you have to keep in mind is that it's not so much that, sure, by the end of Halloween, maybe like we can confirm there's something supernatural because he does get up after being shot 6 times. But that's kind of the point, though. That's the ending. That's the culmination where, okay, maybe the ending tells you that he's more than human, but that's supposed to be the end, and we're never supposed to see him again because it might be a standalone movie. So, sequels.
We're certainly not supposed to see him getting arrested.
Yeah. So sequels kind of, play a bit faster and looser because they have to deal with the fact that we've already established that he can survive a lot. So it gets a little bit more overt, but but this was just like ridiculous. So the actual end of the movie, Laurie's making her speech. Hawkins apparently is our now partner in crime because they're going to like take down Michael together. But as this happens, Allison decides, because she has like a vision of like young clown dressed Michael in the window. She goes
Not sure what we're supposed to make of that.
She leaves Allison with the paramedic. She goes upstairs. She goes into the room and stands where Michael usually stands at the window. And Michael, because he's killed everyone else, has snuck around the back of the house. He's gotten up the stairs and he appears behind Karen and kills her. And it's just like he killed his sister, where not that she's like naked after sex, but she's like putting her hands up to try and block it, and she's getting stabbed in the hand. Maybe much like Big John said, maybe he did still stab her in the tit. I mean, we don't know for sure.
Maybe.
But and the movie just ends with Michael standing there breathing after he's killed her, and then the theme kicks in. And don't get me wrong, ending your movie with Michael breathing and then the theme kicking in isn't bad in and of itself. That's fine. But like, the mob stuff was so dumb.
Oof. Yeah, it's so weird. Again, like I can see some germs of like some interesting ideas there, but the execution is so poor, and then it feels like so weird that it's trying to have a message, but then the message gets so muddled by the end, and like it's like at one point it's trying to have it so dramatic and like look at the violence of it, but then like at the end it's supposed to be like, look how cool it is though. Like it's so weird.
I suppose you can say that. I mean, even though Karen like took the wrong message, so it feels like the message is murky. The second time it still didn't work, and she still got comeuppance for going with the mob idea. So I suppose arguably it's still very anti-mob justice by the end, but
I guess
it's not exactly the clearest thing in the world, is it?
No, it's not. It's again, like I just feel everything is so baffling. Like it's just, I just can't believe that, because like it's hard to make a movie. There's so many channels you have to go through to get stuff made, and even the last one I guess made a lot of money, so they're probably pretty happy and are giving David Gordon Green a lot of leeway, but still someone had to approve this script. And just the idea that people are looking at this and then looking at the edits, and I actually think they did do reshoots at some point in this, but just the fact that they're able to get away with it, and like they were like no, this is fine. Like, do this movie. And the and I do kind of wonder too, like, if that was part of the decision to put this on Peacock like the same day, like if it was like, if they were like, I don't know, once kind of people get word of mouth about this.
They're never going to admit that, but
right,
might have factored into the decision for sure. They might have known it was going to be at least divisive. I mean, there are portions of the horror community who do seem to be latching onto it, but then there's portions of the horror community that love the Rob Zombie movies. So I mean, that doesn't really. Like,
right.
I'm not going to insult you. I'm not going to say don't like it. If you had fun, you had fun. That's fine. But
obviously, these are opinions. Whatever.
Yeah. But like, I can't not like watch this, and it's not like it was any better the second time. When I watched it again today, I was just kind of like, if anything, there was so much stuff and so many bad lines of dialogue that I'd forgotten that I was just like getting shocked all over again. I was like, oh my, like.
I mean, I was talking to I think it was like Matt and Keith or something online, but I was saying like that. I mean, I'm not in a rush by any means to rewatch it, but it was like bad and campy enough that at some point I can see myself like rewatching it for a laugh. But I mean, it's not good in any means. I'm not watching it and revering it the way the filmmakers want it to be, but it's not good. The one thing I will say again, for its credit, I am intrigued by what will happen with the next movie, assuming they still make it.
I believe. Well, it's shooting in January, I think, for next October, so it won't be that long.
Yeah. Which did you hear what they said about the next one?
I heard there's going to be a time jump.
Yeah, it's going to be a time jump, and it's going to deal with the events of this movie along with like the events of like the pandemic and everything, which I'm just like, oh boy, I am not excited for that at all.
You know, here's the thing. I don't want to watch movies about the pandemic. Not for at least 10 years, okay?
Yeah.
Eventually, we can maybe do pandemic-style movies, but the last thing I want right now is that. So, like,
exactly, yeah.
You know, I think it comes back to... I know obviously Loomis did have the one or two speeches about how Michael was pure evil in the original, and he's an important character, and he has the gravitas to kind of pull some of that off, and the whole idea is that he's been so spooked by Michael that he's saying these things. But other than that, the movie doesn't dwell on it. The movie doesn't have every character talking about him like he's some myth, like he's some boogeyman, like he's some whatever. He's just a kid who killed his sister when he was young, right? And that's all he's ever referenced as by like the sheriff stuff. The teenagers don't know who he is. They've never really heard of him that much. Well, I mean, they heard him a little bit because the kid's like, you know, there's a bit of a myth about the house and getting out of the house and whatnot. But,
right.
You know, a lot of the analysis of talking about Michael being pure evil and being representative of like, you know, like the fear of like society and like all of that is fun stuff to analyze and for us to talk about. When every character in the movie is basically saying it out loud, you rob it of actually having that message. You rob it of having that feeling. You just have characters stating concepts that feel like, no, that's what people reviewing it or people who are analyzing it should be saying, not you in the movie, because people don't talk about that in real life. If there's a real serial killer in real life, you don't start talking about he's the boogeyman or he represents pure evil, or you don't say evil dies tonight. Like,
I mean, I'm surprised we haven't mentioned that like 50 times in this movie, but yeah, like everyone like constantly saying that is so grating.
Oh my god, yeah, I am flabbergasted. You said baffled at the start. When I saw it, and I had seen it before you and Matt, you know, I was waiting for reactions, and you didn't even wait till the end. You messaged me like halfway through saying, "What is this movie?" And Matt, who saw it in theaters, so he obviously didn't message me halfway through, but he got to the end of the movie, and he just the message I got was, "F that ending." Like, he was so pissed about the ending. I don't know how he felt about the rest of it, but
I mean, I don't know. Like, the weird thing too is, even if you don't have like, you know, if you're not a super fan or, you know, even like a big horror fan, like, and you're just looking at a movie, you're not looking at it the baggage of the franchise or whatever. I still think it's a poorly made movie. I don't think it looks good. I don't think like, you know, the pacing is good. I think it, you know, relies too heavily on like flashbacks and, you know, like having so much reverence for the first movie, and like, yeah, just this constant jumping between like, you know, like tones and everything, that like, you know, even if like you're not like us, like, and you're not like super fans or whatever, like I don't think you can still look at this and say it's a well-made movie. Like, unless you just, you know, don't really care about like filmmaking that much. Sorry.
I think the wrong people were making this. I mean, I said that with the last one. I think it's even truer now with this one. There's further evidence for the case. And then, yeah, like, it's jumping around too much. There's too many plot points. There's too many characters. The ideas are big and grand, and maybe if it just focused on one of them, it would work. But it speeds through far too quickly. Inconsistent tone and everything else we've said. So it's time to finally rate this damn thing. And this is by far the longest episode we've ever done. So,
wow.
Tim, by all means, rate Halloween Kills out of 10.
Obviously going to be very low for everything that we you know just said. Yeah, I'm not going to go like complete, like, I mean, geez, it's I think with stuff like this there is a bit of an expectation, because we watch like a lot of bad movies, but a lot of times we're watching like the 8th sequel of a like straight to DVD franchise or something that we you know, or like some piece of crap like that, or something that had like a micro budget that, you know, was made by like some weirdo that, you know, like we watch like a lot of bad stuff that you understand it's going to be bad. And so it's like obvious that we'll give it low scores and stuff. But with something like this, when you have like the pedigree of, you know, people involved and actors, like, you know, you have good actors, you have, you know, directors and writers that you know, have actually made other stuff that is good. You know, there's like a certain level of expectation, and and especially when you're doing like, you know, big, like obviously, you know, we said this is on Peacock and stuff, but you know, this was meant to be a big theater release. Like it was supposed to come out what, like 2019 or something.
Just last year. It was just a year.
Was it just last year? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, you know, it's pushed back and everything, but no, like there, you know, you kind of hold it up to a standard that you think there's going to be a standard of filmmaking here, which there just absolutely isn't. Every decision in this is the wrong one, and to be fair, like, you know, it does, you know, give it some camp value. It does, you know, provide with some unintentional laughs, so there is some entertainment on that level. There are some kills that are quite good, but again, it feels misplaced in this movie, so you know, I feel like it's a little hard to rate that, because yes, like as a horror fan, you know, the kills are important, and you know, and there's stuff like that's cool and gore, but you know, there is context for these kind of things. And again, you know, I keep coming back to, they want to get back to basics. They want to do a direct sequel of these movies to the original, but then they're doing stuff that doesn't feel like the original. And you know, these over the top gore, these John Wick moves, it's not like it. So even if there are cool parts like that, it feels like the wrong movie to be doing it. So
on that point, like I think if that's all it was though, see if it was like, okay, we got this new Halloween movie and the kills were very untraditional Halloween, very gory, and it's kind of silly how he's doing John Wick stuff. If it was just that, but it was just that schlocky tone the entire time, I'd probably be quite like forgiving and say, oh well, at least it's a fun stupid slasher movie. The problem is though, is it's trying to be a lot of other things at the same time.
Yes.
That's the problem.
And especially, and I think I'm much more forgiving if you're like trying to be something like kind of cheesy versus when you try to be something that's like touching and dramatic and is like pulling out your heartstrings and you miss it. It's like, it just feels like that much worse. So yeah, I'm not going to go like the bottom of the barrel. I'm not going to say it's the worst movie that we've ever done, because you know, this wasn't an Eli Roth movie, so, and
it wasn't Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
What was the more recent one? Like Hellraiser's 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm being a little mean, but hey, whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's not the bottom of the barrel, and there was some unintentional laughs, and to be honest, I am more interested in a weirdo train wreck of a movie than I am just like a boring, like, you know, it probably would have been a better movie if they just did a, you know, standard Michael escaped, he's hunting people down. Like, it would have been a better movie than this, but also probably would have been like, there's a good chance it could have just been boring and just like, all right, it's just not really doing anything new, but whatever, average, middle of the road movie. I do think it is a little more intriguing when you get something like this that is really swinging for the fences, but they're just missing so much. And obviously that gives us a lot more to talk about because we've been talking about it for 2.5 hours, for God's sakes. So with that being said, my score finally, I think I'm going to give it a 3. It's really bad. Maybe has a few good ideas, maybe has some good kills that are misplaced, and some unintentional laughs. So there's entertainment value in that. And again, it's at least interesting. And, you know, I'm at least thinking about all the decisions, even if they are literally like all the wrong ones. So yeah, I mean, that's my score. That's my justification.
Yep, I concur with pretty much all that. 2.5 hours, by the way, with basically no tangent, so I might point that out as well.
Yeah.
No, like you said, every decision, like it's just even scenes where Tommy's making this speech. I'm like, okay, you have Tommy making a speech, you know, reminiscing about the events of the first movie. Okay, I don't necessarily love the idea, but I can get on board with it. But then every single decision, like the intense close-ups, the way he phrases things, the grandiose way. He's like, I was that little boy, and the boogeyman's coming for you. Like every line of dialogue, every like filming and editing technique used in that scene. Some scenes are better than others. Obviously, they're not all completely terrible like this one, but it was like every single choice, every single shot, every single line felt like the wrong choice. You know?
Yeah.
And that's just just baffling. Everything's baffling. So honestly, I think you nailed it with the 3. I think when I rated it on Letterboxd the other day, I gave it a 4 out of 10. But honestly, seeing it again and talking about it, I think I'm agreeing with the 3. I think it is a goddamn mess.
It didn't age well in those 2 days.
No, this is like, I think the final point I'd like to reiterate is that you are obsessing with having moments, characters, names, and details from Halloween when none of that really is that important outside of the shape, obviously, killing people. The only thing that's important is that it actually feels like it spiritually is a Halloween movie, and this is not at all. And what an exciting, creepy cameo from a hand in the background. That was delightful. But yes, yeah, damn, that kid's opening doors already. It's exciting. But yes, 3 out of 10 from me as well, which brings pretty much an end to this saga. I will quickly do the outro. So thank you to our Patreon producers for the month. Thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Borneo, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. Hopefully this has been a joy for long-time fans of Screams to get such a meaty slaughtering, let's be honest. That's kind of what it was. So thank you to you all. You can support us by liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications, sharing us out at Screams Midnight on Twitter, and of course supporting us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month, and you get some bonuses for your trouble. But that is all of that. So thank you for joining us once again. And just quickly before we go, Tim does have to pose for the thumbnail, so I don't know. Evil dies tonight. 3, 2, 1, pose. Okay, I can live with that. Thank you.
Trying to be in a mob.
I am.
I should have had a prop like an iron or something.
Sure. Oh yeah, an iron would be great. Yeah. Maybe I'll Photoshop one on. I'll have another crappy weapon, like something stupid. Maybe I'll just hold up a cat. I'm like, yeah.
Someone just throwing cats at Michael Myers. That would have been pretty funny. It's in the crowd.
I'm so hungry, guys. This is whenever I do.
I still gotta pee.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. That was halfway through the show, by the way. That was an hour and 12 minutes in, because I noticed. I looked down and checked when you asked. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. I can't even think straight. It's been so long. Keep watching scary movies. Evil does not die tonight.